Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow underway across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us wherever you can hear or watch the show. You can certainly do that at YouTube. Hope you'll subscribe to the channel there. Trey Wallace from OutKick.com will join us. We'll talk college football headlines, SEC, and more. That's straight ahead in about 20 minutes. Armando Salguero will join us today as the NFL schedule release will be officially announced later this evening. Well, we already know a plethora of games across the slate. The NFL's made this into a 3-day extravaganza instead of just a one-night event. Armando joins us later, and we'll discuss all the key matchups, difficult schedules, easy schedules, and does it even matter as we sit here in May. We will also say all these NFL draft grades, do they even matter as we sit here in May? Or do you actually have to look back and compare grades of 2020 to 3 years later? We'll try that out later in today's show. And we get with Davey Hudson as well. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. Excited to be here.
Are you excited about the NFL schedule release?
Not nearly as excited as most people, but here's what it does excite me. The NFL's ability to sell literally anything. There's a line in Tommy Boy that Big Tom Callahan, played by Brian Dennehy in the beginning of that film, that he could sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman wearing white gloves. That, ladies and gentlemen, perfectly encapsulates the current state of the NFL. They are selling a schedule that we already know the opponents with. And I mean, you would think this is Christmas for sports fans. It is incredible, the amount of interest in these games. Oh, we've got the Chiefs and the Lions opening up the season, and we got a triple header on Christmas Day. And I'm here to tell you, I'm here for it also. Not to the level of some, but I love it. And it's a stern reminder that the NFL can do whatever they want right now and pretty much get away with it. They had some issues back in 2016. They're over that now. And the fact that it can be a borderline national holiday when schedules are leaked, not even in one announcement, schedules are trickling out left and right across the league with national games, shows you that the NFL can sell anything to anyone at any time. Hutton, it is a great time to be in the league headquarters in Manhattan because they can get away with anything.
It's a great time to be a Packers fan. Apparently, their entire schedule has been released on accident, per The Athletic.
I always love when it's like a clerical error or someone tweets something out earlier than they're supposed to, or an email goes out to media too early. When those stories come out, that's always the most fun.
Now, one of the coolest additions to the schedule release has been the social media aspect of it. With the videos, you got Peyton Manning and Russell Wilson last year teaming up to do that in Denver. The creativity with it. Some teams go with a musical artist. Other teams just have Jerry Jones have a letter come in, and then he just reads off the schedule. The teams right now know their schedule. And just like the NFL draft, they're keeping it under wraps for the most part because they need their social media teams ready to just rock and roll as soon as 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern rolls around. But here's where the schedule matters to the fans because unlike in college football, in a conference where the third Saturday in October is a rotating home game for Tennessee and Alabama, you don't know if your NFL team that's connected to your favorite college team is going to be home or away that week, or if your team is going to be on a bye week and you want to schedule something that, just so happens, maybe it'll fall during our kids' fall break. Those are the things that intrigue fans, and also just gearing up and trying to plan around a weekend. From the team's point of view, that really doesn't matter. But here's what does. Here's what they argue about with the schedule makers. Division games, they want to know when the divisional games are happening. And we hit on this last year. There were a couple of different instances over the last several years, but specifically Washington and New York played back-to-back games with the bye week in between, which is just ridiculous because teams and seasons and injuries and the war of attrition, rookies become more ingrained into a starting lineup, and they're not rookies anymore by the time December rolls around. Teams evolve, and if you're playing back-to-back like that, you're not getting a true representation of the two head-to-head matchups. in what matters as you battle for playoff positioning. Now, we know where the Giants ended up and where Washington ended up. Point being, that was a great division a year ago. And they were playing back-to-back weeks with, again, just the bye week in between. I believe it was Washington that had the bye week. They want to know where the divisions are in the schedule. They want to know the sandwich games that are in between the bye week, meaning, is it another AFC opponent? If you're if you're in the AFC East and you have another AFC opponent in between your next divisional opponent, that's going to be a huge stretch in the season for your playoff chances. How many games are you facing an opponent where they are coming off a bye week? This will surprise you. If you dig in and look, there are the haves and the have-nots, where there may be a year where a team does not face another team coming off a bye week. That is a huge advantage for that team that doesn't have the other opponent coming into town, or you're going on the road as they're well rested. Meanwhile, there will be a team that may have multiple instances of this, 2-3 times, plus you're also the opponent as a team plays on Thursday night and has the long weekend and the mini bye, as we call it. They want to know the altered scheduled games, what those mean. Thursday night football. Sunday night football counts for this. Monday night football. The Saturday flex games around Christmas and around the end of the schedule, week 15, 16, 17. London games and more. Are you having to play on the East Coast on the road and then fly to London, or do you have a home game where the players can go back to their families, say goodbye, and then fly to London? All of that matters to how you set up your season. Weather games early in the season. They don't want to play in Miami. You don't want to play in Tampa Bay. But you also don't want to play in Buffalo in December. You don't want to play in New York in December. Those are all factors that teams will be looking at. And then the travel miles. That's also where, in a league that prides itself on everyone should be around the 8-8, 8-9, 9-8 model. Seattle is always going to have a boatload of travel miles. And if you're a West Coast team that's headed to London, you're guaranteed that you're going to be playing on the East Coast the week prior. So you're gone from home for 2.5 weeks potentially, based on whatever's happening the following week when you get back from London on your bye week. All of that, Chad, is what matters for the teams today. What matters for the fans is, okay, Patrick Mahomes is coming in win, and Aaron Rodgers is coming in win. And, oh, by the way, if you finished fourth in your division last year in the AFC, and you drew this year your conference, your division in the AFC drew the AFC East, you get the New York Jets with Aaron Rodgers. That's the schedule the Jets have, is the fourth place schedule where you play the common opponent that finished in the same spot you did in their division.
Well, I think it matters different for everyone. First off, it is a gigantic marketing coup for the NFL that it matters this much at all. So hats off to them, because they've turned it into something that is highly anticipated year after year. But for the fan of the individual team, where you may have season tickets or you're going on road trips with the team occasionally, yeah, that individual team matters, because that shapes your weekends in the fall as to what you're doing. For most of America, though, I really think what matters is, I get to watch Patrick Mahomes now at noon on Christmas Day against the Raiders. Or go on down the list. The opening night is going to be Lions-Chiefs. For most people, it's just that first sense of excitement, because football season is eventually going to come back, and now I know what I'm going to be doing each weekend with the biggest games, or at least what you think the biggest games are going to be. So it is different for everyone. You laid it out well about the teams and what they're looking at and what they may be calling the league office complaining about tomorrow. But for most fans, I think you're looking at the TV schedule and saying, here are the big national games these weeks that I'm going to be watching.
Yeah, but that doesn't plan your fall. Because if you're a PSL holder, if you paid a certain amount just to have the right to buy season tickets for one of these teams to help fund their stadiums, right? Like your plan, based on your investment, you need to know when you need to be in town versus when you're leaving.
Yeah, that's why I opened by saying it's three different things.
There's tiers to it.
There's the fan who's going to be planning their weekends. It's going to shape their weekend because they're going to games or they're going on road trips with their favorite team. Then for the most people, though, I think it is, this is my television viewing for the fall. So there's different reasons to get excited.
And how about over the past couple of years, we've seen Dallas and Tampa Bay, right? You've had the brands. How about this year? They're opening Thursday night. Mahomes, Super Bowl champs, they'll open at home in Kansas City against Detroit, featuring the Lions and the buzz behind the franchise that's had no buzz behind it for a long time. Known for being the cellar dweller. And they'll be kicking off against the cream of the crop of the NFL.
Huge year for Detroit and them having some validity as a contender. No Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Chicago's worse off than you are.
Yep.
Minnesota, to me, is the team to beat right now in that division, I would say. But Detroit's right there with them. Big year, and they get the NFL draft next spring also. So all of that leading in to what's going to be a big moment for the city of Detroit next spring. I'm all in on the Lions. That is the team that I'm most interested in the NFC. The AFC is just loaded with storylines and quarterback after quarterback. NFC, give me the Lions. That's the team I want to watch more than any other NFC team.
Looking forward to it. And again, we'll continue the discussion on the NFL schedule. Armando Salguero joins us next hour. Chad, we've got 2 NBA games on tap tonight. 76ers with a chance to close out the Boston Celtics. Philly is back home. They lead that series 3-2. And then the second of a doubleheader, Suns home with a chance to tie the series and head to a Game 7 in a series that's 3-2 Denver. And last night, series stay alive. This is great for the league. Knicks win. Jalen Brunson continues to show out, plays every minute for the first time, full game. And then meanwhile, Steph Curry, who was really cold, still finds a way to put up 25 or so points. But they find Draymond Green with a double-double where he has 20 points and, 10 or 11 rebounds. And then they pair that with Andrew Wiggins, who went off last night. And they hold off L.A. and they get the win and they extend the series.
The second-round series have been incredible. And the fact that all of them are going to at least get to a Game 6 is a huge boom for the NBA. Now, the hope is that this isn't the mountaintop of these playoffs and that the series don't fall off a cliff in the conference finals and the NBA finals. If the trend continues, though, we're going to see some great conference final series and possibly a great NBA finals. I will pose this question, though, about what's left in the NBA. How many true alphas are left on teams? I can go down the list right now, and there are a number of teams left that I don't know I can point to a true alpha. The Boston Celtics are one of them. Jason Tatum's a great player. I wouldn't put him in the category of alpha, going to go win you a game, wants everyone to get out of the way when it's time to go win. Jimmy Butler's an alpha. Steph Curry's an alpha. I think Klay Thompson's an alpha. They've got multiple alphas. LeBron James, certainly an alpha. Is Jokic an alpha? I think so, right? But if you start going team to team, Hutton, and trying to say this team has the guy that has what it takes, that he wants everybody to get out of the way when it's crunch time, that's not every team left in the NBA playoffs. Will that bear a factor now as we enter these Game 6?
Well, and it bears a factor, yes, but they also have the opportunity to create one of those. A guy can rise to the occasion and claim that brass ring that we always look at down the list where it's LeBron and Steph.
Yeah, I think you can do that.
Jokic can really become one of those household names where played in Denver. I realize the media is voting him in as MVP, and he's been excellent. He's great. But, until playoff time, the vast majority of the common basketball fan is not watching him on a nightly basis.
No. I don't think Denver's much watching him on a nightly basis, but much less the league. But he is a truly great player. The Lonnie Walkers, the Austin Reeves for the Lakers, they can step up in spurts and win you a game in a fourth quarter.
Yeah.
What I'm really searching for, though, is will someone levitate?
Yeah, Embiid. Your MVP.
James Harden. Jason Tatum. Name any Jaylen Brown. Go down the list of possible Celtics that could do it. Jimmy Butler's capable of doing it. You've got Devin Booker and Kevin Durant with Phoenix. There are guys that are capable of it, but who are we left to say they truly are an alpha for their team and can really take it over. I think that list is small, and that's because I have a very high bar before calling someone a true alpha in the league, right? In any league. And there's not many that are left in these playoffs. Will someone else step up as the series get later?
You know, another alpha is Matt Ishbia, new owner of the Phoenix Suns, at least to me, because what he's doing is he's taking advantage of the Diamond Sports Group, which is a subsidiary of Sinclair Broadcasting, one of those that filed for bankruptcy, trying to alleviate $8 billion worth of debt. And Ishbia he inherited a team that was a part of that contract. And he announced that, hey, he was going to take everything was going to be underneath the Suns' umbrella. And U.S. bankruptcy law protects the debtors from having their contracts modified or just completely terminated without their consent. So he's done this, Ishbia has done this without Diamond Sports Group's consent. So there is a judge that has blocked the Suns from agreeing to this new TV setup where everything is more or less in-house, broadcasting on free television, online streaming, and more. What this is just a pause in the process, because this is what the NBA is headed towards. We've seen this from the regional sports groups. Those are dying. Those are going by the wayside. And we're seeing it in Major League Baseball as well. So I see the headline, Chad. This is just a wait and be patient approach now, even though the Suns have said, like, hey, the season's over based on the contract after the regular season. So we can announce whatever we want, but the contract can't be terminated even though they filed for bankruptcy.
You know, we had Clay on yesterday talking about the streaming business. Certainly the regional sports network bubble is bursting before our very eyes. The streaming bubble may burst soon too. So we keep looking at possible Pac-12 TV deals, NBA. We're talking about now Major League Baseball teams that are without a television partner. Will they move to a streamer? Will they start their own thing? These are big questions facing the future of sports right now, because the streaming model is not doing that well. Regardless of all the content they're pumping out, they're losing a ton of money also. And I feel like we're doing this roundabout thing to get back to, we really probably had it right with just basic cable all along. That was probably the best business model for everyone involved. And we may end up circling back to that at some point. And sports could be a big part of it.
Because a lot of the streaming services, you end up paying about the same amount of money per month, right? If you combine everything into it. And in this case, what Ishbia is doing, it would be on free TV based on an agreement they have with Gray Television there.
Yeah, and he's
partnered with like an upstart streaming
he's
service.
losing millions by not, shopping this out to other people, and he's doing it saying, I want every Suns fan to be able to watch this team and not pay a dime for it. It is a great marketing move for him. And how much money does that make him in return? And ticket sales and merchandise and everything else. And just I'm not talking about the tangible, not the money in his hand, not the wads of cash he's going to have, but the intangible of endearing yourself to an entire market
think
and
about
a fan base.
We're not talking about a market without any star power either. No. Durant, Booker, and others are a part of this. I mean, if you're looking for a fan base that would be, at a fever pitch to watch the product, these are the players you would want to acquire.
Well, look, I haven't paid for a drink on a Southwest flight since they screwed everything up during the holidays, okay? I think that's a pretty concerted effort by Southwest to say, we'll lose a lot of money on drinks for a while, but we can afford to do that as a goodwill gesture. Matt Ishbia can't afford to lose millions on a TV deal if it's going to in some way benefit him long term.
Was it a heavy
This is a calculated move, medium. Oh. This is a calculated move to ensure that he's well-liked in that market and this team is well-received for years to come. I think it's brilliant. And he's sacrificing short-term earnings for long-term goodwill in doing so. Brilliant.
Devin Willock's father has filed a $40 million lawsuit against the University of Georgia and others. We'll pick up with that story and more with Trey Wallace. He joins us next from OutKick.com on Hot Mic. recently retiring. Your locker was very close to Tom's locker,
right
wasn't
next
it?
to 12, yeah.
What was that like?
Man, it was cool, man. He a funny dude, man. He's a nice guy. Joke with him every day. You know, he's a good dude, man. He's probably one of the only dudes that I know that walk around in a bathrobe in the locker room, bro. So
You go up against him in practice all the time. Could you see that big jump coming from Daniel Jones going into this season?
Man, when I first played against Daniel, coming in last year and seeing him work, man, I knew, the talent that he had. It was just one of those things where, you always hear the saying, God's timing is always right. It was just one of those moments where you knew eventually it was going to click and everything was going to work out, not just for him, but for us as a team. And I'm just so happy for him.
Which video game are you most proud of making the cover for?
Oh, definitely Madden. Madden, yeah. Like I remember I come from a big family. My mom had 6 sisters and 1 brother, and a lot of cousins, 30-some cousins, and and I remember one of the younger ones was like, "Man, you're on Madden. You're really good." And I was like, I was the high school #1 player in the country.
Yeah.
I broke every record at Alabama, All-American. I get the pros. I'd won the MVP already.
Yeah.
Been to the Super Bowl, won the MVPs. Like now, because of Madden, now you're cool. I was like, oh, okay.
You had done a few things.
Yeah. Now I'm good. Okay, all right. Well, that's how it works in y'all's minds.
And I remember when I first started working in the morning news. Shout out to Drew Kaliski, super producer for NFL Today. He was just talking about season. How you feeling? You ready to go? Are you excited? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like awkwardly hesitating to ask me a question. And I'm like, what's up, man? Speak your piece. And he's like, do you know what's going on in the NFL? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you know who plays for what teams and who's been traded where? I'm like, yeah, bro. What do you think? I'm living under a rock. And this is my job. I'm studying just like anything else.
6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hutton and Withrow with you for Hot Mic across the OutKick Network. Hope you'll go to the YouTube page. That's where you can find all of the shows on demand. OutKick.com is where you can find Trey Wallace. Our guest covers the SEC for OutKick. Trey, great to see you, man. Hope things are well this week.
Yeah, guys, it's good to see you. Hope y'all got through the Taylor Swift madness last week, and Chad with this fun trip up to New York. So good to be back with y'all.
I think there were more people around the Taylor Swift concert than in Manhattan over the weekend. So yeah, I got away from the crowds somehow.
Trey,
hey, I was there on Friday night, so I can tell you how crazy the madness was. All good.
Trey, we knew it was only a matter of time, right, with the lawsuits that were going to be filed against Georgia and literally anyone else that could be named in the tragic accident and then the death of a former staff member and player. And Devin Willock's father has filed a $40 million lawsuit against Georgia. What's the latest? What are the claims, and who all is named in this?
You know, so it's interesting when we break down the lawsuit and how we look at it and who's actually named in this. You've got, besides Chandler LaCroix, who was the driver of the vehicle, you've got Jalen Carter, who is named in this first round draft pick. He's also the NIL company that he got the car through. So the car dealership that he got the car through that he was driving on that night, where he already pled no contest to racing and is on 12 months probation, 80 hours community service, a fine, whatnot. So he's involved in the lawsuit, along with the University of Georgia Athletic Association. So pretty much the University of Georgia Athletic Department. So when we really break this down and we look at this, the money figure kind of stands out to me. If you guys remember last month, his father, Kevin Willock, he filed a notice, and he was filing the notice to let everybody know that he was filing the lawsuit. Well, then it was $2 million that was in the notice that was going to be filed. He was saying, okay, I'm going to sue them for $2 million.
Which is the maximum or whatever, right?
Right. Yesterday we got to $40 million, and that was filed. So he's looking for punitive damages as well. And look, I'm not sitting here. I don't blame him for one bit. There are circumstances around this situation that do not put Georgia in a good spotlight when it comes to this lawsuit, in my opinion. Dating back to the whole celebration weekend, when unfortunately, the driver was on call pretty much the whole weekend. That was her job, was to drive around these players, drive around recruits. We see this at all college campuses, by the way. This is not just a Georgia situation, but unfortunately it's a Georgia situation because of what happened that night. You look at how this is going to play out. The fact that we've gotten this far tells me, and I spoke to a couple people yesterday about this, they don't plan on settling. Georgia is kind of dug in their heels. If you look at the statement that they had released when the first notice of a lawsuit was coming, they dug their heels into the ground. They said, we fight some of these allegations. I don't have it right in front of me, but we're fighting some of these allegations. A lot of this is untrue. So I'm interested to see, what comes out of any type of, if we go to a trial here, what comes out. There's going to be cell phone records. There are going to be documents that are going to be released. And if we get that far, it gets to a gray area, guys, where a lot more could be brought out about Georgia besides just what happened that night, because they're going to go back. And if you're a good attorney, you're going to go back and you're going to look for inconsistencies or stuff like this that has happened, not a car wreck or anything like that, but stuff that's led up to that type of incident. You're going to go back years to try to find that guy. So I am now interested to see, how much this gets involved. And the NIL thing is also an interesting factor in this. And that's something that I don't think people are talking about enough. The fact that they have filed the lawsuit and putting in there as a defendant, they put in the auto group that Jalen Carter got the car from. It is very interesting to see where this goes, because it's not just university officials around the country. It's not just people like me, journalists watching this. You got NIL groups that are now watching this too, where you're like, oh, wait a minute, we can get involved and tagged in a lawsuit or something like this. So there's a lot at play here, guys.
Yeah, and it's the Sarcione Auto Group out of Ohio. They are the official auto partner of the Cleveland Browns. They're the ones named in this because they're the auto group that had the deal with Georgia defensive lineman Jalen Carter.
Well, and it's Jalen Carter. It's not just one thing, right, with Georgia. It's Jalen Carter. Right. It's Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
It's another wide receiver getting arrested. It's a lineman using an anti-Asian slur on live social media. He had to go back and apologize for. And I think the next logical question, Trey, is, will this affect Georgia's bottom line? And the bottom line in big-time college sports are wins and losses. Is this something being used against Georgia on the recruiting trail currently? Do you think this in any way impacts their program and their ability to land the top players in the country and continue winning SEC and national championships?
I think the way that happens, guys, is if other coaches around the country start bringing this up in recruiting meetings. Now, let's be honest. If your child and you were sitting in a room with a head coach from Georgia or an assistant coach from Georgia, and you saw, I don't have any kids, but Chad, you would probably be like, you'd ask some questions. You'd be like, okay, what has gone on over the last 7 months?
You're getting sued for how much money? I'd have a lot of questions. Yeah.
Right. You're getting sued for how much money? You're telling me that you have people that drive around our student athlete, our kids, when they're drunk at night, and you're allowing them to go to strip clubs and you do all this. Look, 18 to 21-year-old kids are going to do all that stuff. Okay. But it's all about the university being involved in it, is, I guess, the best way that I'm trying to put it. So there are going to be questions, and you're going to have coaches from other schools not use the tragedy that night against them, but use the circumstances that have happened around the University of Georgia over the past year or two. And look, do I think they take a hit? Not particularly, not like, not like Alabama athletics right now in the situation they're in from a PR standpoint. I think Georgia, it's going to get bad for Georgia when this thing goes to trial, if it does. And if you're smart, if Georgia is smart, they figure out a way to settle this case, because you do not want. I talked to a lawyer yesterday. They said I asked what they're going to do. I already kind of knew it, but I asked whether they're going to go and get Kirby Smart's text messages. They're going to get assistant coaches' text messages, athletic directors' text messages, phone records, everything that they can get. Even if it's a small tie to the case, they're going to ask for everything. And Georgia will probably have to turn that over, especially when it comes to Freedom of Information Acts as well, too. So there's a lot that goes into this that can make Georgia look even worse. Unfortunately, I guess is the best way to put it, over the next year or two.
Well, and let's just fill in the gaps here on why they're going after Georgia based on Chandler LaCroix and her driving that night. So she was driving a university-issued vehicle for the football program. She had multiple speeding incidents and tickets, up to at least 4 that were on record. I know Georgia's saying they didn't know about the most recent one, which was speeding like over 70. She was going over 70 in a 55. But she was behind the wheel going 104 miles per hour at the time of the wreck, and nearly, twice the legal limit based on the blood tests?
Twice the legal limit, yes.
And that's why they're going after Georgia, based on the fact that she was driving the university-issued car.
Guys, it's as simple as this. It would be like any other case. If I were to get hurt on the job for a company that I was working at, I would, and it wasn't my fault, I'd sue the company, because I'm either losing wages or punitive damage or mental health, whatever.
And
So-
it's not about her
Yeah,
driving. It's that she was assigned to drive that night for the
Yeah,
university.
look, Georgia's paying a lot of money. I mean, I don't know they're going to pay the full $40 million, but they're going to have to settle for a lot of money in this deal based on all the facts of the case.
I think they got to meet halfway. Let's
Yeah.
be honest. I think they have to meet halfway at $20 million. And the biggest thing, and I want people to take away from this, is that you had her who unfortunately lost her life, but she was on the clock. She was working. She was drinking. It's been proved that she was drinking at the time. She was speeding. And also at the time, they were drag racing or racing down the county highway with Jalen Carter, who also, by the way, pled no contest, which really is saying, yes, I did it. And he was sentenced to not prison time, but sentenced to some sanctions himself. So they have the room here to do what they need to do when it comes to the lawsuit.
So it's rubber chicken circuit time now across the SEC and across college football with coaches speaking to their fans, and then quotes get out, and we like to talk about them.
Yes.
And one got out this week with Jimbo Fisher. He's at the Fort Worth Aggies Club, and he was asked about TCU's season, and Jimbo Fisher says they stayed healthy, they had a lot of experience, and they got to where they had to get to. And then when they got to the SEC, it changed, didn't it? Trey, couldn't the same be said for Jimbo Fisher? That things were going great, and then he got to the SEC and things changed quickly. How is he any better than TCU based on his SEC experience so far?
He got to the Sun Belt last year and things changed. App State.
That's true.
I mean, talk about trying to rile up your crowd with the stupidest comment ever. I mean,
you know those Aggies are, yeah, you tell them, coach, yeah, it's SEC. You tell them, coach.
Get them, Billy Bob.
Gig
That's
him,
what they were.
gig him. That's what happened in that room when he said that.
Right. And by the way, it was at the largest honky tonk in the world at Billy Bob's, which is a really cool place to go.
Yes,
if you've
it
never
is.
been. That's not besides the fact. Jimbo Fisher needs to shut up. I get that he's trying to rile up his fan base. He's trying to get them excited. He also used a quote last night that this team has the tenacity of the 2020 team. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, man, come on, dude. You're going back 2.5, 3 years to talk about, how excited your group is and how mad they are, they want to play. And then you took a shot at TCU, who went undefeated in the regular season while your ass was going 2-6 in the last 8 games of the season. You don't make it anywhere near the playoffs. You haven't sniffed the playoffs besides the COVID year. And then you want to make fun of TCU, who made it to the national championship game by beating Michigan. It's like, come on, man. I know they were in Fort Worth, Texas, and that is the backyard of the Horned Frogs. But man, be smarter than that. Like, and I get it too. Look, you're doing this to rile up the fans. You want to raise some money, some NIL money. You want to get a couple of them gigums out there, and you want to have a good time down there at Billy Bob's. But Sonny Dykes, I mean, he made you look like a fool last year. I mean, Texas A&M's out here losing to App State. They're getting beat by Auburn. Their last 2 wins of the season came against UMass, and then an LSU team that was off and on all season long. So look, you're gonna see this. It's talking season. It is go out on the road and promote your program season, and also let me throw in a jab or two whenever I can. The problem for Jimbo Fisher is he hasn't proved anything yet at Texas A&M. He hasn't done anything yet. Sonny Dykes did more in 1 season than Jimbo Fisher has done during his time at Texas A&M. The period. So I look at it and I'm like, okay, all right, it's a fun little joke, but the joke's on you, bro. Like, you haven't done anything. You haven't made the playoff with a talented roster like you keep proclaiming every single year that you're at Texas A&M. You keep, all right, we got a great roster, man. We're going to figure this thing out. We're going to be in playoff contention. He hadn't snipped it. He hadn't snipped it yet. So I don't, whatever. Jimbo's good to Jimbo. We'll talk to him in 3 weeks down at the SEC spring meetings, and I'm sure he'll have stuff to say and he'll promote his football team. But I don't trust Texas A&M with a 10-foot stick right now until they actually go to Miami in the second week of the season and do something. Maybe I'll give them a small amount of credit, but right now that's a program that's kind of a laughing stock around the conference.
Trey, final minute and a half here. 3 weeks from now, how much is Sankey preaching and discussing the betting scandals across college baseball and implementing his take and driving home the fact that it won't be the NCAA who crushes you, it's going to be me as the conference commissioner if it happens again?
Yeah, that's going to be a hot button topic. And I wouldn't be surprised, guys, if we see more come out about gambling before we get down to SEC spring meetings. And I'm talking about other schools, just in talking with a few folks about this. I think that Greg Sankey is going to try to hammer this home to the press down there.
You're saying baseball or like Iowa State type stuff?
Iowa State type stuff.
Okay.
Not Alabama coach who just went stooping and decided to get caught on whatever. That's a whole nother story. Everybody knows it by now, I hope. But I think Greg Sankey's going to try to make that point, guys. He's going to try to drive it home to the coaches that are in the rooms, to the ADs. And the biggest thing I look at it too is, guys, you invited it on your campus. LSU signed a deal with Caesars Sportsbook in 2021 to make them the official athletics college sports book of Caesars. You got to figure out where you want to go with this. Either you're inviting it on your campus or you're trying to keep it away. And I promise you, if you invite it on your campus, student athletes somehow are going to try to get involved. So it's going to be a hot button topic. I expect him to discuss it a good amount, along with the scheduling changes we're going to have and everything else. I look forward to it. We'll see what all the coaches and the commissioner has to say in a couple of weeks.
Trey, I look forward to checking out the Trey Wallace podcast, available now. Your guest this week is Grant Firking, former wide receiver in the SEC at Tennessee, and now the NIL expert of all things name, image, likeness for On3 Sports. I'm sure that was a great conversation.
Yeah, guys, it really was. I love Grant. I'm glad he got to come on. We also got into the gambling situation, and we talked about student athletes and at Tennessee and other schools that, potential gambling as well and how they got around it, if they did or not. But a great conversation on NIL and where it's going. And we just continue, all of us doing big things here at OutKick and excited about the future. And always appreciate you guys having me.
Trey, thank you, man. Check out the Trey Wallace podcast.
Always fun having you on the show, Trey. Yeah, thank you.
Trey Wallace podcast available. OutKick.com is where you can find that. Coming up, Bo Jackson.
It's a terrifying story.
Yeah, it really is, with the hiccups that he can't get rid of. He's had the hiccups for over a month, and he's having a medical procedure for it. We'll discuss that. Plus, I have an incredible behind-the-scenes story on Bo Jackson that involves a bullet. That's next on Hot Mic.
That's a tease.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
carjacking. We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Chad, Bo Jackson says he's had the hiccups for nearly a year, and for the last month it's increased, and he's going to have a medical procedure to hopefully alleviate this with one of the all-time great athletes we've seen.
It's a terrifying story, and I've got a lot of questions. Is it like a once every 30 seconds hiccup? Does it come once an hour? Does it go away for any period of time and then come back? Is it consistent? Does it pick up in pace? I mean, I've got a lot of questions, and this sounds miserable.
I know. So the College Football Hall of Famer, he's been battling this, and, you know, he had a dedication day for him, and he wasn't there. to deal because he was dealing with the hiccups. That's how bad they were that day. He says, I've had the hiccups since last July. I'm getting a medical procedure done at the end of the week to try to remedy this. He was saying this on McElroy and Kublet on WJOX down in Birmingham. I've been busy sitting at the doctor's, poking me, shining things down my throat, probing me every way they can find out why I've got the hiccups. That's the only reason I wasn't there for the dedication. And the doctors to this point have not been able to find the cause.
And apparently this is a condition that can last years, plural.
I mean,
it's gone a year already with him.
Yeah. What would you do?
Of all the things to worry about in this life, one that I've never thought about was having chronic hiccups that won't go away.
But But
we've all had hiccups at a time where we felt like it would never go away.
And then you try.
And it probably lasts an hour.
Someone comes up and tries to scare you, right? And you jolt out of it, and I always try to just burp or something. That helps me get rid of them.
I've found
Hold
that
your
if
breath.
you can swallow, like get some water and try to swallow one in. Like if you're swallowing at the right time and it hits at the right time, it almost like takes the air in,
reverses it,
changes it. That's my trick.
So the treatment, drink water quickly. I don't think that's never helped me.
That's kind of mine.
Swallowing granulated sugar, dry pieces of bread, or crushed ice. Never heard that. Gently rubbing your eyeballs. This is straight from the Cleveland Clinic. I don't know how that works.
The
either.
eyeballs connected to the hiccup organ that we didn't know about?
Breathing into a paper bag. In parentheses, do not use a plastic bag. Davey, write that down.
Yeah.
Gently pulling on your tongue. I mean, I've never tried these remedies.
Some of these sound like, someone says, oh, you hurt your leg, and they punch you in the arm. Well, your leg doesn't hurt anymore, does it? Like pulling your tongue or rubbing your eyeballs sounds like you're just trying
Hold
to
your
distract
breath
from
and
the issue.
swallow 3 times is one.
Yeah,
Why 3?
that's
Why
another
3
one.
and not 4?
It's the same concept as swallowing water. You're trying to choke it back when you're holding your breath. If you can let one, it's like swallowing a bomb and letting it go off inside of you.
Yes.
You hold your breath long enough, and if one of the hiccups go off in your chest and don't come out, then you're good.
Yeah, I mean, the cures are not common for the chronic hiccups, according to Harvard. It takes a while. That sucks. So, Bo Jackson, you want to talk about a guy that lives, by the rules of where he grew up in Alabama, rural Alabama. It is Bo Jackson. Bo knows. And I had the chance to catch up with him for a chat with Eddie George once, Chad, where the 3 of us were on Zoom during COVID. And he joins us from his man cave. And the backdrop is nothing but, as you would expect, bows and arrows everywhere. Handmade. This is what he does, is like his hobby.
He's an archer.
Yeah, he makes arrows. He loves to hunt and fish. He had fishing rods that he had made, everything. Lures on the wall. So we went through all that, and I opened up just by saying, like, hey, I see all these bows and arrows. I don't see any guns. I'm assuming you don't hunt with anything but the bow and arrow. He goes, no, I hunt, but I just bow and arrow whenever I'm out for leisure. And then he rifles through this. It sounds like pocket change, but it's bullets. You can hear. He reaches forward, and he's digging through all this stuff, and he pulls out this high caliber bullet, and it's autographed, by the guy who's dating his daughter. And come to find out, they were getting married that following weekend, and he had kept that bullet that he had signed 6 years prior. And I'm thinking to myself, can you imagine going to the home of Bo Jackson? He pulls out the ammunition and says, sign this, because if you F up, this is yours. It's got your name on it, and I'm coming for you. And I would believe him.
Yes.
This
is not a joke.
I love the fact. I said, how many other bullets are signed down there? He goes, none. This is the only one. And true story, he said he was going to present it or whatever at the wedding. We did check in. Everything was great for the wedding that weekend. But
an amazing story.
I love it. And he had no idea we were going to go to this. And he's digging through it, trying to find it, because he knew it was in this big pile. He had this big bucket of ammunition.
I'm imagining him, when the son-in-law comes over for dinner or for a Mother's Day or whatever. He's like, "Hey, Daryl, go down to the man cave and pull out your bullet." And he makes him present the bullet in front of him at the dinner table, and he just has to sit it there. It's like his it's like his placard in front of him, and it's his bullet that he autographed every time.
He autographed it when he started dating his daughter. This is all after like asking for her hand in marriage and all this. He was as dead serious telling that story then as he was 6 years prior. And you could see it. And I was just like, man, this guy is intense.
If you don't love Bo Jackson, something's wrong with you.
Beautiful signature, by the way, on this bullet. I don't know what I would have done.
He does everything
I would have been
well.
jittery. This guy looked like he's signing a check.
The man never misses.
Alpha.
Gets it right every time.
Details next on Urban Meyer and Jacksonville, plus headlines on Hot Mic.
Primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number one pet peeve, telemarketers. Number two pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number three pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number four pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you got to keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up with littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
When people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Glad you're with us. Just like that, the second hour is here. Chad, first hour flew by.
It's always a good day when they fly by like
We've got
this.
Armando Salguero of OutKick.com coming up in about 20 minutes. OutKick.com, where you can find this NFL schedule release later this evening. Armando's got you covered there, and much more. You can find all the shows at OutKick.com and on YouTube. We hope you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got details on Urban Meyer and Jacksonville and much more. Looking forward to diving into some other topics as well. But there's dirty play last night that's not getting a ton of coverage, but is likely going to lead to a suspension. Vegas and Edmonton in the NHL playoffs. You have Alex Pietrangelo, and then you have Draisaitl. Draisaitl has 13 goals in 10 games. The playoff record is 19, and the double slash that comes through at the end of the game without the game, there's nothing on the line. If they win this round and advance, speaking of Edmonton, he has a chance to shatter the goals record in the postseason. And a dirty hit like that, I'm curious how the league comes down on this series and on Pietrangelo on this, Chad, just simply because of the magnitude. If this were the NFL, I would say this is the equivalent of it being the fourth quarter, teams up by 3 scores or 3 possessions, and you have a defensive player go at the knees of a quarterback who's on a tear, record-setting tear.
It's got to be at least another game. He's going to get a game suspension, I would guess.
Well, so for the precedent for this, with how they're quote unquote protecting players, has been a game, and they're awaiting suspension news within this series. But it's worth mentioning just based on the dirty hit and how they want to protect their stars. You know, the NBA, they're thinking about, at least the discussion of doing away with offensive fouls, right?
Mm-hmm.
Taking charges
to reduce injuries.
To reduce injuries, and they're doing that to protect their stars, because we were discussing it. Their top guys, Giannis and Ja Morant, were taking charges and getting hurt, missing games. The NHL doesn't need, especially if Edmonton doesn't advances, they don't want a situation where Draisaitl can't set the scoring record.
Well, and they also don't want, guys taking completely cheap shots at the end of games on someone, because what if it's the star of another team that you just decide to put in some, third-team defenseman in there to just rock and completely level a dirty hit against to take them out of a series. So you got to protect that if you're the NHL more than anything else, more than any scoring records or anything else or playoff implications. You probably need to send a message on this one.
Jim Trotter sending a message to NFL media. NFL media, also NFL.com, or anything under the media umbrella for the National Football League, by saying that he's glad he's no longer working for NFL media. Quote, "I no longer have to worry about my words being watered down or silenced altogether, which was not always the case over my final 2 years with NFL Media Group. I was told we would always report the news, though we might not opine on it. That was not the case, particularly when it came to reporting on team owners or the league office," end quote. This is not surprising.
No, I don't know why anyone would tell Jim Trotter that. If he's telling the truth about when he got the job, they said we could report on anything we wanted, as long as he said, we don't opine on it, so they don't give their own analysis on it, but they can report any news they get. Why would you believe that would ever happen? You work for the NFL.
It's like
this is like the local reporter who goes and takes a job with the team.
Yes.
They're not breaking bad news on that team that they would have broken with the local newspaper.
I will say this. DallasCowboys.com, they go after team results. They don't go after Jerry Jones, but they will rip into news if you're playing bad. Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott are not off limits at DallasCowboys.com. And when you realize, like, man, this is coming from the team website, they're saying this. They're saying that they're not sure if this a couple years ago, if Dak Prescott's not going, he doesn't deserve a contract extension. They should just double down and franchise tag him again and make him prove it. I mean, some sites do it, some sites don't. NFL.com You can find
the Cowboys are definitely the exception.
Well, no doubt.
Most team sites don't. They soft pedal everything. Their team employees.
But they're not going to rip Jerry Jones apart on that side.
And that's the main point with this. I'm sure that you can report something bad on a player or even a coach for an NFL media group like Jim Trotter would do, but they draw the line at the owners. They're not going to allow it. I don't know how this surprises Jim Trotter. You take a job with any media company, and they're probably not going to take kindly to you reporting awful news, being the one to report it on someone else within that company. That's common sense. When you take a job, you're not going to be able to do that. So none of this really surprises me. Now, does Jim Trotter have a lot to say and a lot of news he can break now at The Athletic about owners? Does he have a lot of info he's been storing up that he can go all in on someone now? Maybe. I'd be interested in reading that if so, but none of this surprises me. This is like anyone who takes a job with a team. You're a team employee now. If you're on the radio crew, if you're on the TV crew, if you write for the website, you are typically leaning towards positivity with that team. I think it is important, though, when you talk about the Cowboys, they're willing to go after the results and the players. I think that's probably only because Jerry Jones tells them to or allows it, because he doesn't mind that part of it as long as it's not critical of him.
But they're not trying to water down why they lost, right? They're not making excuses.
Yeah.
And Trotter's also one of the reporters who's going after the diversity within the league office, within those covering the sport itself. But I mean, by and large, where we're headed, not just with the NFL, but with the mega leagues, the teams are employing who used to be those newsbreakers locally. They are now bringing them on board under payroll and having them write for their team site so they can break their news. They can post the tweet 5 seconds before the email goes out to the rest of the media, and they're controlling the news cycle. And that's, by and large, where we are. We need more Jim Trotters at The Athletic or Armando Salgueros at OutKick who are going to break the hard news. And
be critical when it's warranted.
But let me also say this. A lot of the employers only care about the headline and clickbait instead of the digging that goes on behind the scenes, like the reporters in the league used to do, like the newspaper guys used to do. Now it's about who they're dating, who they're banging, and what drugs they're taking, and where they're partying, more than it is, okay, are they living up to expectation?
It's TMZ.
Yeah, you're looking for the clips instead of the story. And that's unfortunate because that starts at the very top of companies.
Let's also be intellectually honest about this. I think a big portion of it is this is exactly what teams want. They go and get the guy or girl who breaks the most negative news about them, that does the best job in journalism of doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if you bring them into the fold and pay them what they want to work for you, you eliminate a problem. And here's what else it does. It creates a vacuum for bloggers, podcasters, everyone else that wants to come out and apply for a credential can now suddenly do it. And those teams at the same time can just disavow anything they write or anything they say as, just bloggers, just a fan site, or just whatever it may be. So this all works in favor of the team. They don't want to deal with the media, first off, so they can hire good media to come work for them, and then they can be their puppet once they come to the team or the league. And then, two, once you get all these, children that come up and want to have a podcast or want to blog about a team, well, yeah, we'll give you a little press pass for the day for camp. Come on out, Sonny. You can do it. And then when they write or say something, guess what the team can do? They can strong-arm them to not do it again, or they're going to lose their credential. Or they can laugh it off and say, they're not media anyways. Because we've created a system where we're eliminating media because we want nothing but rainbows and puppies about this team. So the team and the league, a big part of this problem. On the flip side, I'll also say Jim Trotter had to know what he was signing up for when he started taking checks from the NFL.
But for the last couple of years, he's been asking difficult questions that Goodell at the annual media address for the league has not answered all that well as far as diversity hiring. And he specifically works for under the NFL umbrella for NFL media. He's the one asking the question. Trotter's asking that to Goodell. And Goodell's answering that to his, NFL media employee.
Well, the one thing the NFL would never, ever do in the way of censorship, and they know how this would look, is try to silence an African-American reporter who wants to ask questions about diversity in the league. If Jim Trotter, if someone in the league said, you can't write about this or ask about this, and he told his story on that, the NFL knows how awful that would look and how they would get absolutely drugged in the media by everyone. They would just get destroyed by every media outlet if they did that. But what they can get away with is, hey, Jim, don't write that hit piece on Dan Snyder.
Not just Dan Snyder. Don't give the details of the Brian Flores lawsuit against the league.
Yeah, or what these other
really
owners
what
have done.
He's asking about
what these other owners have done or not done with the Rooney Rule, or whatever it is that he may be reporting on.
Right.
You can't report on them, but that's the way they can get around it. And you know what Jim Trotter did the whole time that he was employed by the league? Kept his mouth shut about it until he's gone. Then he goes to The Athletic, and now he can talk about it.
Well, he actually opened his mouth and asked the questions, though, to the commissioner.
No, I agree with that, but I'm saying specifically, Jim Trotter's not saying he wasn't allowed to talk about diversity. He's saying I couldn't report on specific things with owners, and maybe it was in line with diversity.
Watered down or silenced.
Right. So, point being, the checks didn't bounce. He continued to take the check, and he did what his bosses told him and did not talk about whatever he was going to report on or say about NFL owners. And now he can say it. Well, good. And look, I say good. I want to know about it. I'm all for him saying whatever he wants now at The Athletic and him talking about this now. But
I look forward to the next column on exactly what he wanted to write that was edited.
Hey, with that lead-in column, my first thought was, boy, you set yourself up now. I can't wait to see what you got to say coming out of the gates and what you were going to report on you couldn't with the NFL and what you're going to say and report on now. So I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm leaning in to whatever Jim Trotter is going to write next after that lead-in column. But we have to be intellectually honest about this. Deep down, he knew what he was doing when he took the job with NFL media. And I'm okay with him talking about it now, but let's not pretend that when you take a job covering a league for that league, that there aren't going to be some stipulations along the way.
Chad, Urban Meyer took the Jacksonville Jaguars job and then was fired within that season based on the toxic culture and environment that players behind the scenes off the record are saying in a litany of different stories that The Athletic put out earlier this week. And it goes back to 2022 and the whole saga with Trevor Lawrence being drafted. Meyer comes in. We know about the allegations that he kicked the kicker and all that. But what this really comes down to in this updated piece to me is Urban Meyer threatening to come in and cut players and using the fear tactic of, if you're cut, what are you actually going to go do? If you're not going to play hard now and earn it, you can make $15 an hour somewhere else. And it was quotes like that players on the they're agreeing to anonymity on this. Some of them anyway are saying was the most offensive thing they've ever heard in the locker room, and that's when they lost all respect for Urban Meyer. To me, that type of motivating tactic has gone on behind the scenes in the league for a long time. You know, talking about where players come from and what the ultimate goal is, where they come from versus what the ultimate goal is plastered on the wall in defensive lineman's room when Jim Washburn's coaching Albert Haynesworth and all the players that he's helped go on and get a second and third contract and the millions that they got in their bank account immediately for hustling and playing hard for the defensive line coach. To me, this is the equivalent of that.
I think Urban Meyer comes across as a really miserable person, quite frankly, in this story. And I understand hard coaching, and this is not me being soft. But when you stand up in front of a room, it's not just saying, hey, you guys, you don't work hard. You're not going to work hard anywhere. You're not gonna when you say, most of you in here couldn't make more than $15 an hour if you didn't have football, to a room full of people, that is beyond demeaning to everyone in that room. And when you go out and you're talking to a receiver who's from the South and who is African American, and you got the white quarterback throwing to him, and you walk up to the white quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, and you say, hey, we got to explain it to these guys 4 or 5 times. They don't have the right transcripts in the South when they go to college. I mean, come on, man. When you're going up and threatening to fire the position coach in front of the players and you're demeaning your own staff that way in front of the players, what kind of leadership is that? Here's my big question. Who's defending Urban Meyer? I know Dan Dockich does. He's buddies with him, and he interviews him. Who on the Jaguars defends him? I haven't heard a single player stand up and say, it wasn't that bad. He was actually pretty good to me. Every time a coach is left in disgrace, I think of Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee. I think of Dan Dockich's old coach, Bobby Knight, at Indiana. People will stand up for the guy. Someone will. They'll come in and say, he was actually tough, but he was great to me. Here's what he did for me. Here's what he did for my family. He was great to work for. I have not heard a single positive thing about Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. And I know he did this throughout his college career.
I think it was miserable there.
And got away with it. But man, oh man, I'm thinking.
Not just got away with it. He won.
Oh, of course he won.
He won. And that's why Ken Wisenhunt was hired here, because he won in Arizona.
Yeah, it doesn't make them good people, though. It's just not how there's
you don't
a
have
way.
to be good people to win, though. Then that's the point. Like he failed on the field and failed off the field where he lost all respect, just like Zach Wilson lost the respect of the locker room for comments in New York, where they just were just like done with him, which is a surprise that he's still there. But this is on like the times a million per player going through the list of things. I also don't understand why so many people are off the record with this story.
Yeah, I don't know what they're fearing. Just go ahead and say it.
Yeah.
Marvin Jones wasn't in the story.
DJ Chark.
John Brown wasn't also. Marvin Jones, I thought, really handled himself pretty professionally. He walked out of the facility because he said that the receivers were running the wrong routes at one point, and then most of the receivers walked out. But he handled himself well in public in front of the media. He kind of diffused things in front of the media, even though he was angry with Urban Meyer at the time.
There's one thing for sure. If you're a college coach making the jump to the NFL, you cannot coach the NFL locker room like a college program. Doesn't work.
No, and I don't know.
There's a different management behind the scenes that goes on with that.
And I think Urban Meyer, too, again, wildly, and I don't know him personally other than the guy, refused to shake my hand when I was 23 years old. Other than that, I don't know him personally. But there's no denying his greatness as a college coach. I would ask the question, I know that he was just done at Ohio State recently, but given the current state of college football, with open transfer portal, with NIL, with everything else, would Urban Meyer succeed to a great extent in today's college game? Maybe he would adapt. Maybe he's learned from the Jacksonville experience and he'd be a different type of personality and he could still find success. But I don't think this would work.
Well,
what we read about in Jacksonville, I don't think would work at any college program today.
But where are these stories from the college programs he's coached? I don't hear about that either.
I don't. People aren't talking about it there, probably because they won. I mean, it's probably it.
And the players didn't leave at a high level either. Like I just don't. I don't know what went off track with him. But clearly, he's not the same coach in Jacksonville that he was at previous stops.
The most telling thing to me is that it does not surprise me when someone fails to a large extent that there's going to be people talking poorly about that person.
Yeah.
It's the lack of anyone defending him. That's what is more telling to me than anything.
Defending the stories that are coming out.
Well, even there's been no counter to this, right? Dan Dockich did a good job getting Urban Meyer on to talk about it. He's mentioned in the Athletic story about what he said to Dan on Don't At Me every day right here on the OutKick Network. But other than that, who is coming to bat for Urban Meyer in the NFL with Jacksonville? I figured some player, even that wasn't with that team anymore, would say, he wasn't bad to me at all. Some of the stuff is overblown. And this team needed a kick in the butt. And they didn't like it. Because, hey, I'll be the first to raise my hand. When he initially took over, I'm thinking Jacksonville is soft, and they're losers, and they're weak, and they don't like hard coaching. And then I read these stories, and I see that no one defends them.
And they had Trevor Lawrence.
And that no one defended him, and I think, man, he just may be kind of a bad guy, a bully. But you become a bully how? By bullying people, by years and years of success.
Tons of success.
When he's walking around, the office saying, give me your resume, say it to me right now if you want to challenge me on anything, That's a guy who's won a lot, and that's Urban Meyer. Also a jerk.
Armando Salguero is the opposite of Urban Meyer, not a jerk. And he's going to be covering the NFL schedule release and more. One of the best, and he writes for OutKick.com covering the NFL. He's next with us on Hot Mic. Recently retiring. Your locker was very close to Tom's locker, wasn't
right
it?
next to 12, yeah.
What was that like?
Man, it was cool, man. He a funny dude, man. He's a nice guy. Joke with him every day. You know, he's a good dude, man. He's probably one of the only dudes that I know that walk around in a bathrobe in the locker room, bro. So
you go up against him in practice all the time. Could you see that big jump coming from Daniel Jones going into this season?
Man, when I first played against Daniel, you know, coming in last year and seeing him work, man, I knew, you know, the talent that he had. It was just one of those things where, you know, you always hear the saying, God's timing is always right. It was just one of those moments where you knew eventually it was going to click and everything was going to work out, not just for him, but for us as a team. And I'm just so happy for him.
Which video game are you most proud of making the cover for?
Oh, definitely Madden, yeah. Like I remember I come from a big family. My mom had 6 sisters and 1 brother, and a lot of cousins, 30-some cousins, and you know. And I remember one of the younger ones was like, "Man, you're on Madden. You're really good." And I was like, "Cuz, like, I was the high school #1 player in the country.
Yeah,
I broke every record at Alabama, All-American. I get the pros. I'd won the MVP already. You know?
Yeah.
Been to the Super Bowl, won the MVPs. Like, now because of Madden, now you're cool. I was like, oh, okay.
You had done a few things.
Yeah. You know, now I'm good. Okay, all right. Well, that's how it works in y'all's minds.
And I remember when I first started working in the morning news. Shout out to Drew Kaliski, super producer for NFL Today. He was just talking about the season. How you feeling? You know, you ready to go? Are you excited? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like awkwardly hesitating to ask me a question. And I'm like, what's up, man? Speak your piece. And he's like, do you know what's going on in the NFL? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you know who plays for what teams and who's been traded where? I'm like, yeah, bro, what do you think? I'm living under a rock? And this is my job. I'm studying just like anything else.
6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hutton and Withrow with you for Hot Mic across the OutKick Network. We say hello to Armando Salguero, covers the NFL for OutKick.com. Joins us weekly at this time. NFL schedule release later this evening, even though we know about half of them, and in some cases we know all the games based on leaks. Armando, how are you?
Gentlemen, how are you?
Excellent. Where do you put today's coverage on your scale of annual things that you'll be writing about across the NFL?
It's huge. It's the NFL. And the NFL can go to the bathroom and it would be huge because they would turn it into a 3-part, 4 TV series that includes leaks 2 days before, which is pretty much what has happened with the NFL schedule release. I remember once upon a time, it was, here's the schedule. You have a 4 p.m. kind of, you can't write anything until 4 p.m. and then you're off and running. And that kind of changed when television decided we don't have a whole lot of fodder in May after the draft that is NFL related. Let's do the schedule. And so, of course, writers and reporters being creatures of habit, we tried to, leak the thing as we were best able. Well, the NFL decided, well, if they're leaking, we're going to start tipping our games too. We're going to get in on the fun and create this firestorm of attention for the NFL schedule. And they've been doing it for 3 days, and everybody's a flutter about the NFL schedule, which, is fine for business because that's the business I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, it's great, and it's great on paper. And last year's a great example for me. I'm going through the AFC West, all the hype and the build-up, and how Denver's just scattered all across all these national TV games. And I couldn't help but think last night, Armando, Friday football, Black Friday, Amazon's paying $1 billion. They add to it, and their first game is New York with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets against Miami and Tua Tagovailoa. And if what happened last year happens again this year, who knows? Oh. Maybe we end up with Zach Wilson against Mike White on Black Friday.
I can see that you're an optimist.
I was last year.
Yeah, and you learned your lesson, I see. You decided, no, I'm not falling for the banana in the tailpipe trick again. So you're going with not believing in the 39-year-old quarterback with 2 bad offensive tackles against the oft-injured 6-foot guy who has had concussions and missed games in each of his 3 previous NFL seasons. Yeah, I can see why you're thinking that way, Jonathan.
Yeah, but on paper it's great, and I realize why they're doing it. They're trying to make up for last year's schedule, but there's really no way to do it. All the hype about the Super Bowl rematch in Week 11 on Monday Night Football is great. There's no guarantee it's going to look anything like it looks right now, and that's why it's fun to look at, but it's a lot like fantasy football in a way, where you're looking at it going, man, this looks great, and you're quarterback GM and all these things, but all the bickering that goes on behind the scenes, I'm sure, by the networks, they're the haves and the have-nots come November and December.
I got to give the NFL a little tip of the hat, though, in picking the Lions as the Thursday night season kickoff game matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs that will be played right here, by the way.
Arrowhead, behind Armando right now.
Right, absolutely. And so I like the fact that the Lions are not a team that anyone recognizes as good, except for this show starting last October, I guess. And then it was interesting that they've had a good offseason. They finished 5-1 at the end of the season. And I guess the NFL is expecting them to do good things this year. I kind of like it. Of course, it would be funny if the Lions come to Kansas City and the Chiefs go, no, we're about 4 notches, 4 levels above you guys. Let us show you how. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
Let me be cynical and negative now here, Armando. How about this for cynical and negative? The NFL is now anti-family and anti-Christian because they have a triple header on Christmas Day, of all days, of all holy days. They're having nothing but football all day. I say that completely kidding. This is awesome. And this is what everyone's going to be doing now on Christmas Day. After they open presents, they're going to watch back-to-back-to-back NFL games, which to me is a prime time window for the league and another chance to take over another pro league in the NBA on a day that's normally theirs.
Yeah, you remember when the NBA used to own Christmas Day?
Yes.
Broadcasts? They would have, whoever, the Lakers typically, sometimes the Heat, sometimes the Celtics, sometimes, well, I guess very few times the Knicks because they weren't good enough. But the NFL decided, hey, that's not a bad idea. And so this year, even though Christmas falls on Monday night, they're coming with a triple header on Christmas Day, Monday afternoon at 1, at 4:30, and then the Monday night game. It's like we're going to nuke the NBA, and we're still going to – you got to give them this, Chad. They're going to let you get to the gifts and the presents early and let your kids open them up. And then it's football the entire rest of the day.
That's right, kids. Go play with the toys now. Get out of my way. Daddy's got a game. We got Jets games to watch now. Let's go. Or whatever it is first. Raiders, Chiefs. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's work. That's right.
Yeah.
Armando, is this the upcoming vote in a couple of weeks, whenever the next NFL owners meeting is this the year that they can implement the flex scheduling for Thursday Night Football late in the year?
Yes, they actually tabled that motion at the NFL meetings in Phoenix in March. And so there was pushback, especially from the New York Giants ownership, Mara being the chief there, who were saying, we can't do this to the fans. We can't have them buying tickets to games on a Thursday night in November, in December, and then telling them in November, a couple of weeks before, oh, by the way, the game's not on a Thursday night anymore. If you're coming to town, too bad for you. So there was pushback there, and it was tabled. It will be brought up again in the next coming meeting this month.
I want to know if the NFL schedule makers knew this, and they probably did based on Robert Kraft being a part of the media ownership group that I guess negotiates these contracts. But Robert Kraft announced that Tom Brady will be honored on behalf of the Patriots for their home opener. Now, what I don't know, and maybe you do, maybe you've seen, I haven't seen, are they opening up on week 1 or week 2? I don't know, at Gillette. But whenever that is, Brady's going to be honored as a Patriot that night. And I'm assuming that's a Sunday night, Monday night thrill ride for whoever gets that game.
Yeah, so it's going to be the Eagles, according to multiple reports, which ironically is one of the teams that Tom Brady lost the Super Bowl to.
Yeah.
He won, 7 of them, but he did lose a couple, and the Eagles was one of them. Not his fault, of course. But look, you bring Tom Brady back to Gillette, and the only thing that I can think about that night is Tom Brady will be the best quarterback in the stadium.
Yes.
Period. He's better than Mac Jones. I think we all agree on that, right?
For sure.
He's better than Jalen Hurts.
Yes, and he knows it. He's gonna get the itch.
I don't know if he's going to get the itch. I think,
he should have scheduled this, and he should have scheduled this around Thanksgiving instead of week 1.
Yeah, if he had gotten the itch, he'd already be working at it because that's how long it takes to.
I bet he is.
To prep a 45-year-old body to, be able to play in the NFL. even if it's Tom Brady's 45-year-old body. But regardless, there is no one in that stadium that will be a better quarterback than him that night.
Interesting storyline, and maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something. But Jacksonville and the city of Jacksonville, and the Jaguars, they're renovating their stadium. They've come to some agreement. And while that renovation is going on, they're not going to be able to use their stadium in 2024 and 25, I believe. I may be off by a year. But do you think that they play their home games in London, or do you think they take their home games to like Orlando? Because the next biggest stadium in Jacksonville is 12,000 seats.
Right. So a couple of things here about the Londonville Jaguars.
Yes.
I would say to you that I don't understand why a renovation project it necessarily evicts an NFL team from its home for 2 years. The Green Bay Packers renovated Lambeau Field, and they played during that time at Lambeau Field. The Miami Dolphins renovated Hard Rock Stadium, and they played during that time at Hard Rock Stadium. They didn't just renovate it. They put a freaking, like top on the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
So the Kansas City Chiefs, this stadium right here behind me, was renovated, and the Chiefs played at the stadium. And so the idea that you cannot use the stadium while renovations are going on, and I don't mean while they're going on. I don't mean fans stepping over tractors and bulldozers. I mean, look, football season runs basically from September until January. So in February up until August, you work on the stadium renovation, and then you stop. And then you pick it back up in February. That's how it's done. So I reached out to the Jacksonville Jaguars and asked them for, guidance on this. They haven't gotten back to me yet. But the idea, again, that they have to go to Orlando to Camping World Stadium, which is a 20,000 seat stadium, or, pick up stakes and go to London, or play in the swamp in Gainesville. I don't understand that. I just don't.
It's typical Jacksonville. It's a Jacksonville story, isn't it? I mean, that's how I read into this. No other place would have this much, mess on a renovation that has been in the works for a couple of seasons. By the way, I was off by a year. It starts in 25. So we've got some time. They've got some time to figure it out. It's 25, 26. By then, Goodell may have a whole division of teams in London. Who knows, Armando?
Right. And again, forgive me for pushing back on the whole thing, but we're assuming that what the mayor said is accurate.
That's right.
The mayor's a politician. Just saying. Sometimes they're wrong.
Sometimes the NFL can be bigger than local municipalities also, and can bulldoze their way through a local mayor at the local level for some of their own markets. So we'll see how it turns out. We're all going to see how Jordan Love is this year also, Armando. 5 nationally televised games, if you believe the leak of the entire Packers schedule that we saw earlier. We've got Aaron Rodgers. All the interest is on him with the Jets, right? And this is sort of the lesser talked about story, is his successor in Green Bay and how it's going to look now for the Packers.
Yeah, and so is he going to be good, Jordan Love?
I don't think so.
Okay, we can all have opinions about it.
Yeah, but we're going to find out.
Well, but Jordan Love doesn't know. And the fact that he's admitting it, he talked for the first time since the Aaron Rodgers trade a couple of days ago. And he was asked, so how's it going to go? What's it going to look like? And he's like, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine.
That's refreshing to me to give that answer.
It's refreshing, but if you're a Packer fan, you're going, oh boy. God bless Jordan Love. He talks about having confidence, and I like the fact that he's going to lead differently than Aaron Rodgers, right? Aaron Rodgers had no problem calling out teammates, even calling out coaches when they didn't meet his standard. Jordan Love has talked about raising people up, instilling confidence in them, protecting them as his form of leadership, and making them feel good. So you gotta like that. That's good, but he better be good. That's all I gotta say about that. He can have all the questions he wants. You better be good, brother. That's it.
Let me say this about Jordan Love. I prefer that approach, the honesty of saying, I don't know, let's all find out together, Packers Nation, about how we're going to be this year. I prefer that to, let's say, Russell Wilson saying, Broncos country, let's ride, after a terrible defeat. So if I'm looking at both of them, I'd prefer the Jordan Love honesty approach with that than Russell Wilson. Now, I would prefer Russell Wilson's career over Jordan Love's also. So you give a little and you take a little, Armando.
I think I fall in the Dan Marino school. Dan, are you going to be good? Watch. That was his answer. Watch.
Armando, have you booked your Hotel Baglioni in either London or Germany for either of these trips, since we know these games?
No, I really haven't.
Okay.
I've been to both. I did cover a game in Berlin once upon a time. It was a preseason game, nonetheless. I was able to go, and obviously I've covered a lot of games in London, and it's a fun experience for all involved, except for the team that loses, because the ride home from that game, those games are on the scale of ride homes. They're just below Super Bowl and playoff losses. Because it's not the disaster of ending your season just shy of the ultimate goal. It's not the disaster of ending your season with a failure in the postseason, but it's a disaster in that you're sleep deprived, you just got beat up, and now you've got a 6 or 7 hour plane ride to get back home and get on a normal sleep schedule again, so that you can sometimes with these teams play again next week. But no player that I've ever spoken with likes that.
Titans went for 2 and lost to the Chargers when I was there. On the flight back with the team, we're boarding. Someone asked Matt LaFleur, "Hey, Coach, how are you?" Chirp back real fast. "How do you think?"
That was Titans offensive coordinator Matt LaFleur at the time.
And then we
Not
boarded
Packers
the
head coach.
plane for 9 hours. Armando, thank you as always, and we'll chat soon. Enjoy the schedule release.
Thank you.
Yeah, Armando Salguero with us weekly, and you can check him out daily online at OutKick.com.
I'm going to start responding to people around here.
How do you
with that.
think?
How are you doing today, Chet? How do
Really?
you think?
Yeah. I'm going to my
It's a good
sleeping pod. I
response.
just left a castle. We lost an NFL game. I'm going to my sleeping pod to, have filet, medium rare plus.
The Athletic reporting, that's far better than the way Urban Meyer greeted people in the Jags facility, by the way, when they asked him how they was.
You're getting cut.
Yeah.
Coming up, we get weird with Davey Hudson.
Good luck making $15 an hour.
Strangest story of the week is next on OutKick.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in the land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Coming up, I'll tell you about a conversation I had with Titans quarterback Will Levis, and I think based on answers that he gave in a survey, I can convince Chad that he may be cool, believe it or not. That's coming up in about 10 minutes.
It's going to be quite the feat if you can pull that off, Hutton. I look forward to it.
Right now, we get weird.
Let's get weird. Let's get weird. Weird. Get weird. Weird. Get weird.
All right, Davey Hudson, what do you have this week?
Whose backyard are we going
Thank
to?
you, guys. Actually, we're going to start right where we left off last time. We're going back to the Netherlands. Chad, I know you missed the story about the Dutch sperm donor
I love
who's
the Dutch.
got like over 500 kids out there. But we're back in the Netherlands because we have a
got a Dutch
man
orange shirt on today too, Davey.
who
Well
was,
done.
I was about to say, I didn't even plan for that. I
Agent
now
Orange.
realize I'm very pale even while wearing the orange shirt. Makes it even worse, especially with the lights on. But anyways, we have an 82-year-old man that kept his dead father in the freezer so he could talk to him. His father was 101 and does not believe that there's any foul play. The picture you see is just the side of the house. Use that information as you see fit. I don't know really what you could do it for, but I guess you just see this. You're like, oh, this is where that happened. But the big thing for this story that's really got me concerned is the Dutch officials are just like, yeah, we told him to get his house cleaned up, it's in disarray, and then we'll determine whether this 82-year-old man will be able to continue living independently. I'm like, he's kept his father in a freezer for 18 months so he could talk to him. I think we pretty much know he does not need to be by himself at this point.
Was this Jeffrey Dahmer's defense when they found people in his freezer? Oh, these are just relatives I'm trying to talk to. There's nothing to see
It
here.
sounds like a Stephen King or an Edgar Allan Poe story.
Yeah. And only the Dutch. Leave it to the Dutch for this one. What's next, Davey?
We go to South Korea. We're just going to keep traveling around the world. We have a man that ate a banana that was a part of a $120,000 art installation at a museum. I'm not even going to try to name the museum that's in Seoul, South Korea. But this is just a bigger situation of how the art industry really is just a great excuse to money launder, in my opinion.
Yes. Who determines art?
Yes.
This is duct tape. Someone's duct taped a banana to a wall, and this is art. This made it into a museum.
Someone probably spent a lot of money on this.
This is your PSA to not go to an art gallery.
And it's one of those things, too, where this banana is replaced every 4 days, but we just so happen to have a guy go up, eat the banana because he was hungry, is what he told the outlet, and then they're just like, all right, let's just move right along. We'll put the next banana up.
I don't understand how things become art and who determines what the art is. How do you get to become the person who says this is good art?
Well, the next story, the hotel manager certainly felt like he was an artist.
Yeah, from South Korea to Nashville. We're coming right back. There was a hotel manager at the Hilton downtown in Nashville that ended up breaking into the room of one of the customers. This guy was the night manager and, just casually decided, I'm going to start sucking on this dude's toe.
This is last weekend.
By the way, we're looking at a picture of this guy. If you gave me a lineup and said, which one of these guys sucks toes?
Yeah, who's the toe
This
sucker?
would be the dude I'd point out every single time.
Chad, it's funny you mentioned Dahmer earlier because I was thinking, this guy knows where some bodies are buried. And, I get it. You shouldn't
This dude's
judge a
face
book
looks like
by
he's
its
chewing
cover.
on toes in this picture.
But
as we
he's
look
putting
at it.
off big Dahmer vibes. I'm like, this guy knows, he's seen some things. And obviously, he's got a criminal record.
Yeah.
It's not going to.
But I'm thinking
his dad is also dead in his freezer, and
I'm
he talks to
thinking,
him.
so he's managing a hotel that's charging like $500 to $1,000 a night last weekend, right?
Yeah. It's charging a lot.
He looks
on
like a
the weekend.
hotel manager that would have like the free HBO light flashing outside the motel.
like a Bates. He'd like a member of the Bates family.
Yeah.
Bates Motel type manager.
This man was caught, I believe, March 30th was actually the date the incident happened. This guy's
The
name,
arrest?
52-year-old David Neal. Peter Brennan was the guy who had his toe sucked on. Of course, you're sleeping, and the next thing you know, somebody's in your room that night. Guys, and to make this story personal, so I knew about this story. My mom was in town for a work conference, and I was like, I met her for dinner last night, and I was like, Mom, where are you staying at? She said the name of this hotel. I did not tell her about this incident because I knew she was staying for one more night. She'd probably be freaked out. Did I make a good move by not telling my mom and her coworkers what had actually happened at this hotel?
I would have told her, but common sense would say it's not going to happen twice in the same place.
You tell her now.
Mom.
Now that she's gone, you got to tell her.
And I can also tell you that they went to dinner that did not have a maitre d'.
No maitre d' tip at dinner, that's for sure.
How was Chick-fil-A last night, David?
Delicious.
Good thing it wasn't a Sunday.
Coming up,
because would have missed out on eating.
We've got the headlines, including the NFL schedule release, what's been leaked, NBA playoffs continue to entertain, and a great story about Will Levis in a survey where he's filled out answers that I love. That's next.
Primary complaint is when you let somebody cross the street while you're driving and they purposely take their time when they see that they are waiting for you crossing the street. That is my primary complaint, and it drives me crazy.
My primary complaint is people who talk on speakerphone in public.
People that chew too loud.
Number one pet peeve, telemarketers. Number two pet peeve, when people don't understand the menu that they're serving. Number three pet peeve, when people ask for change but they have no quarters. Number four pet peeve, parallel parking.
My primary complaint is I can't just go to a bar and have a nice quiet beer. There's all this live music every freaking where. Like, I'm just trying to go to a bar, relax, have a beer, watch the game, but no, we gotta have these guitar players and these bands. Why can't I just hang out and just relax, have a beer, and watch the Memphis Grizzlies? I mean, is that too much to ask?
I do not appreciate or condone anybody that litters. I think you got to keep your planet clean. It's turning your nose up to everybody that has to clean your up. Quit littering.
My primary complaint would be wobbly tables at restaurants.
Another pet peeve I have is no courtesy flushing. No one believes in that. I believe in it. Thank you. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in. Excuse me. Another pet peeve I have is when people have AirPods in and they're singing louder so everyone can hear what they're not supposed to listen to.
When people eat smelly food on the airplane.
Dishes left in the sink.
My primary complaint is when I'm out to eat with somebody and they bite their fork as they are putting the fork in their mouth to eat.
When people bite their fork and scrape that, and when they're eating dinner, you can hear like it's like nails on a chalkboard. Hell no.
My primary complaint is when people complain about me when I bite my fork.
Those folks who are in the airport talking on their cell phone very loud so everybody else can hear what they're saying even though we really don't care.
My primary complaint are drivers who do not stop on a pedestrian crosswalk. Period.
My last pet peeve is that when people text you, they text you that they're busy, or if you call them, they answer and say they can't talk. Either way, just don't respond. You can't text me, don't text me back. And if you can't answer the phone, don't answer the phone to tell me you can't talk.
Just like that, the final hour is here. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. On this Thursday edition, fast-paced show, 6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Schedule release tonight across the National Football League. We already know the season opener. Kicking off the season, of course, the Super Bowl champs, the Kansas City Chiefs, hosting the Detroit Lions on Thursday, September 7th. NBC, of course, has the first Thursday night game, and then they'll transition to Amazon and all things Amazon Prime. But, Chad, I think it's a big statement by the league to send the Lions on the road to open the season against KC. However, the last time that Kansas City won the Super Bowl, they opened the following season against the Cleveland Browns, who had a ton of hype behind them with Baker Mayfield.
They did.
And they played well. They had a furious comeback in the fourth. I think the game was like a 4 or 7 point game. It didn't feel that close, but Cleveland felt like a team that you could get behind then. Detroit feels that way right now.
Yeah, I like the setup of champion versus lovable loser with expectation. That was the Chiefs-Browns matchup that year. That's Chiefs-Lions now this year. They are the Chicago Cubs of the NFL for years and years.
You like that better than Tampa and Dallas?
Yeah, I do. I like it because, to me, there's clearly
Hopefully it's a better game.
Well, there's clearly a setup of this team has been there and done that, and they're a championship team, and they're Super Bowl champs, versus here is this market and fan base and team that is starved for anything of what this team has. I like that versus, look, you're not going to go wrong opening night NFL, Thursday night. They're going to get a good matchup. But I like that as opposed to the either two behemoth powerhouse past champions or two major market teams accustomed to winning going head-to-head that haven't won a championship recently. I really like this Chiefs-Lions matchup to open the season for that reason.
Most of the games kicking off the season will be on September the 10th. September 11th is on a Monday, the Monday Night Football game. Bills and Jets will open the season on Monday Night Football. Other just games of interest, the Super Bowl rematch will happen the week prior to Thanksgiving. That'll be week 11, where you'll get to see Kansas City and Philadelphia. That has also been announced. Beyond that, Chad, just some interesting matchups. Dolphins-Jets, I've pointed out, fascinating to me. They put that on Amazon Prime on that Black Friday, the first Black Friday game, because you get one injury or a couple, it changes the perception of a Thursday night football schedule, which was the joke last year. No fault of the schedule makers at this time last year. You know, when we're ripping the schedule in October, we're not thinking about what we're saying in May when the schedule comes out. But a lot can happen between now and then.
It also works both ways. We will get the occasional matchup that surprises that we're not thinking anything about right now that'll turn out to be a marquee game late in the season.
Cowboys are going to be on the first Sunday night football game of the season. That's no surprise because they draw a massive audience. They'll be sprinkled throughout the schedule. But
the Cowboys, I remember the last time the Cowboys were not in a prime window on opening weekend. On either Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night, or late afternoon national window to open the season. Like, when was the last time the Cowboys just played at noon on a kickoff weekend, week one?
Yeah. It hasn't been for a while.
Feels like it's been a long time.
Yeah, since they've spread out all the different media partners, that's for sure. NBA, it's been a while since I've been intrigued in the NBA playoffs this early on and sticking with it. But it keeps delivering. Saw it last night. The Warriors, they finally returned serve, even though Steph Curry was cold. He hit 3 threes, 3 for 11, 3 for 12, still put up 20+. But the storyline remains that can they win on the road? And now L.A. still gets a chance to close them out later this weekend. I think they will.
I think, Anthony Davis situation's one to watch with a shot to the temple.
Mm-hmm.
But if Anthony Davis can play, I'm going to say exactly what I said last night about the Warriors at home. I'll be saying the same thing about the Lakers at home simply because the Warriors have been awful on the road all season. I don't expect that to change in this series. I think the Lakers probably close it out in Game 6.
And the Knicks, they get a win. They don't let Miami close it out. And now we get to see a longer series in that, too. It's a win-win for the NBA. Yesterday, the storyline was we could potentially see in the NBA Finals an 8 seed and a 7 seed. And now that's still up for grabs in all this. Philadelphia, they take a game lead last night. So they have a chance to, they have a game lead. They have a chance to close out Boston tonight. And Denver can do the same.
Boston was really bad last night. I got to watch a lot of the second half of that game.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Well, but the Suns,
Well, in
though,
their last game.
Their
sorry.
last game. They played
yeah,
tonight.
Two nights ago. They were
now,
awful.
Now they're in Philly.
Yeah.
And that's 2 bad performances in Boston by the Celtics.
I was surprised they were that bad in Boston. Knicks Heat last night. The Knicks got it going a little bit late in that game, but I just still they're up 19 in the second half.
The Heat had
and
a
they
furious,
could not just put them away. And when you leave Duncan Robinson over, he's going to make you open. He's going to make you pay. Lowry, I thought, was really good for the Heat also. There's not been one time in this series, Hutton, where I felt like the Knicks were a better team than the Heat, even when the Knicks were winning. When they win at home, I still feel like the Heat are far superior to this Knicks team.
Chad, some NFL scheduling leaks coming out. You ready for a few of them?
I'm always ready for schedule leaks.
The Giants, it'll be the Giants and the Cowboys.
Were these supposed to come out on a show or something? Is there still a scheduled show for this?
No. Well, there will be a show tonight, but here's why they're leaked. It's because all the teams, they already know their schedule. They were told this either late last night or early this morning because their social media teams need time to prep these release videos.
They've got the videos to get ready.
So it's hard to keep everything silent. Not every team's schedule is out. But Cowboys are going to be on Sunday Night Football against the Giants to open Week 1. Let's see, they will also be on the road they'll be home, against the Seahawks on Monday Night Football. So they do have a handful of primetime games. Also, Derek Carr, this from Ari Meroff, who we had on from the 33rdteam.com. Derek Carr will make his regular season debut with the Saints at home in Week 1 against the Tennessee Titans. So you'll see either Tannehill or Levis on the road against Derek Carr, according to the 33rdteam.com in Week 1.
I'm okay with that.
New Orleans.
That's a good Week 1 matchup for those two teams.
So we had a event at Topgolf last weekend and got a text as we're playing on the third level. Topgolf, by the way. You know how you come across things, you're like, why didn't I think of this? A bowling alley for golf. Meaning, you can be any skill level and have a great time. You can absolutely be horrific at playing golf and have a great time at Topgolf.
Well, we had the one, too, about Nolan Ryan's investment in what's basically the baseball version of that, where you can go hit in a batting cage, but you get your own bays.
You get your own bays for the batting cages.
Your own bartender, basically, and food set up and all that.
There's a wiffle ball field.
It is too easy of a good idea for me to think that we didn't have this a long, long time ago.
I met some of the investors with the one here, and they said it costs on average about $40 million to get going in one spot. And then from there, within the first couple of months, you can not get your money back, but you feel pretty comfortable about your investment.
Yeah, that you're going to make it back in a relatively short amount of time.
So I got a text, and I went down and met Will Levis, Titans' current third-string quarterback, if you want to believe the fact that he's actually behind Malik Willis right now in the depth chart, which is not true, and the backup to Ryan Tannehill. And I went up and said hello to him, introduced myself, and I just said, hey, welcome to town. I want to let you know, I'm not happy with the pick. I've been talking trash. But if you go in and you want to beat out Ryan Tannehill, I'm all for it. You cover the SEC. We've certainly covered your games. You're welcome on the show anytime. Very cool dude. And he just simply responded by saying, hey, man, all good. I've heard nothing but trash talked about me throughout this draft process. So it's, all fair. I'm like, oh, perfect. So their first rookie outing at Topgolf the same night we were all out there.
This made me feel better about the pick when you said his reaction to you coming right up and just stating, I have talked a lot of trash about you, and he just rolled with it.
Yeah, and I said, I totally trash about the fact that I wouldn't have picked you, with their pick in the 11th overall pick or the number 1 overall.
Yeah.
I mentioned ripping Mel Kiper, whatever.
Mayonnaise in his coffee.
Cool dude.
Just kept going on all the reasons he doesn't like him.
No, I didn't mention any of that. But I did come across over the weekend the survey. And I want to get you and Davey to chime in on the survey of Will Levis. Because the perception of Will Levis, I think, is different than how I read this survey that he took, which is given to all the rookies. You name, hey, spell your first, middle, last name, your parents' names, your pets' names, different things, fun facts, whatever. That's how they come up with the media guide bio. instead of just what you did at Kentucky, what you did at Alabama, what you did at USC, whatever. Tell me where it meets the perception you have of Will Levis.
Okay.
Family members currently or previously in the military. His grandfather served in the Air Force in Vietnam. Okay.
Good.
The thing or things people find most interesting about you. He wrote, well-rounded in athletics and academics, graduated magna cum laude.
Okay. Sounds like, a solid student.
This is where you're going to love.
Phi Beta Kappa.
Will Levis. Superstitions or pregame rituals? None.
Oh, I'm a fan. That's making me move more in his direction.
None. Love it.
Big fan of that.
Significance of jersey number? None.
Okay. Hutton, don't make me like this guy.
Chad, your thoughts so far?
Don't make me recant everything that I've said about Will Levis thus far.
Of course, he wore 7 at Kentucky. He's wearing 8 now in the NFL. No significance
I like both
whatsoever.
those answers.
It would be weird for them to make Malik switch numbers.
Also,
well, he can get 7 back soon.
Also hilarious, but yeah.
Degree earned, yes or no? Yes. Undergrad, PSU. Graduate, Kentucky.
Okay, that's good.
I didn't realize he actually graduated from Penn State.
I mean,
he was magna cum laude. I don't know if you heard that, Dave, in the previous answer.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I thought it was just for Kentucky.
I love this answer. Name of spouse / fiance, if it applies.
Right,
you ready?
Yep.
Girlfriend. He wrote girlfriend. Name of spouse, fiance, girlfriend.
Girlfriend.
Chad, your thoughts?
That makes me question him a little bit because I don't know if he's trying to be cute. If he's trying to be a little bit cheeky with the answer.
I think it's brilliant. He's letting everyone know he's taken without saying none. He's letting everyone know he's taken without saying none. It's a brilliant move.
I would have preferred him put N-A.
It is a brilliant move.
Not applicable because he does not have a fiance or wife.
Davey, if you had a girlfriend, sorry, I mean this respectful.
Yeah, no, go with that. We've talked about my dating life.
If you had a girlfriend, would you write girlfriend on this sheet?
Probably not if it's asking for a spouse or fiance.
It says name of fiance or wife. So you put NA, not applicable. You don't have one. They're asking for their name.
He saved himself an argument. He saved himself an argument, and he did it nonchalant. I respect him for it.
I mean, OutKick's already writing articles about Gia.
I've seen her weekend. Everyone has. It's on the front page of the site if you go there. I would have liked it more, Hutton, if he put girlfriend and then, is it Gia, is her name, Davey?
Yes.
Girlfriend / Gia. Because the question, I'm nitpicking, but you got to nitpick the quarterback position. Sounds like a guy doesn't know how to follow instructions. Because that's not what the question is asking.
No.
If you want to clarify, girlfriend.
Sounds like a guy who's
I'm good with that.
The opposite of what I expected here, okay? Football role model. Grandfather. He ended every conversation with, quote, never give up, which is the meaning behind the tattoo on his arm, 2 Chronicles 15:7. The verse says, but as for you, stay strong and do not give up, for your effort will be rewarded. Thoughts?
I like that he's into his granddad, who also served in the military. I don't like my quarterback with a bicep tat. Just being honest.
All right.
Don't like when the guy drops back and he pulls it back and he's got 2 Chronicles across the bye. Not a big fan.
I would like to know another player that he wants to emulate his game after. So I don't know if they're just asking for one person there.
Yeah.
There's like his football role model, mentor.
Oh, if he'd have gotten really specific with the player, like someone just off the wall that he would have gone with as his guy. Like if he said Chad Pennington as his role model growing up in Connecticut or whatever. Like that would have been so specific that I would have loved that. He's from Connecticut.
He's currently living in Massachusetts, sorry.
Yeah, he's from Connecticut.
He was working with Matt Hasselbeck throughout the draft process. That's been his mentor through this process. Top 3 artists you'd have on your festival lineup.
Okay.
Tyler Childers, Drake, and Pearl Jam. That is a great mix, and it brings everybody to the festival.
Yeah, he won me with Pearl Jam. Like I'm not going to.
Well, he won someone with any of those answers.
Yeah, but again,
I disagree.
I'm being really nitpicky here. Is he trying to win over people with the answers, or is he giving me an honest answer?
Did he give a douchebag answer or not? That's the criteria. The answer is no, he did not.
It's a douchebag move to try to answer the way you think people want to answer.
I don't think he's lying.
If
he
he's
might
telling
like
me the
them, but
honest truth, then-
he's trying to make people like him. I think that's trying too hard and not being authentic. I could be wrong, but that's how that one comes across.
I think he listens to all three. And I think
it's a good answer. I also think that it's one that, to me, seems a bit contrived in that you're trying to hit every genre. It's like, I don't know. Let me see here. Let's go Willie Nelson, Lil Wayne, and Nirvana if Kurt Cobain was still alive.
That answer, up until that answer, he was
I'm
doing
listening to
everything
Nirvana
right.
with Cobain dead.
He's wanting me to. He's wanting everyone to like him with that answer. But you got to know you're going to have detractors no matter what. So
Let's just be blunt. If me, Chad, and Clay are in Knoxville, we're listening to all three of these artists as we go to Neyland Stadium.
Oh, for sure. But he's saying festival. I guess this is like a dream scenario festival lineup, not currently
Off
living.
the field interests and hobbies. He pays attention to the stock market, loves movies, and going to the beach.
Don't love it. The stock market one's interesting.
Dude's got his master's degree.
I love movies. Going to the beach. I mean, it's a fine answer. It's not one with a lot of specificity.
For a guy with a girlfriend, I mean, going to the beach is a requirement.
Yep. She had a weekend also. Can see it at
Best
OutKick.com.
celebrity encounter you've ever had. Tom Brady this past summer at the match.
That's good.
It's fair.
That's a good one. I like him on that one.
Movie.
No issues with that answer.
Movie you can always rewatch.
Uh-oh.
Step Brothers and Talladega Nights.
All right. He's my quarterback now, ladies and gentlemen. He's my guy. That's the best answer yet.
No. I saved the best for last.
Because that's very specific, too.
Best TV show to binge. Succession.
Okay. I think that he should start over Ryan Tannehill day one.
Best Succession is his favorite currently. Then he says best binge/rewatch is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, I'm in.
Mic drop. And when I saw this, I thought of Chad thinking.
If you would have led with that, you wouldn't even have to give me the other questions.
That's why I ended with it. Because we're going through. I just want to. And if you, what's the criteria? How many other wrong answers would there have to have been?
He
for
had
him?
some wrong answers in there, but the last two correct answers to me completely wins me over.
The good outweighs the bad by far.
Yeah, way better than I expected.
I don't see any bad here. I just see Will Levis, who unfortunately had Mel Kiper call him the best athlete in the NFL draft.
Way better than I expected. The answer on Step Brothers, It's Always Sunny, Succession, Talladega Nights, has me wanting him to start over Ryan Tannehill on day one. Because I guarantee you Ryan Tannehill's answers to this
we have changed
would
the
be
perception.
far worse. How much worse would Ryan Tannehill's answers to this questionnaire be?
I don't know how much worse.
In my eyes, knowing me,
they would
knowing
be worse.
Levis,
They would be worse.
Thank you.
They would be worse.
But
they would both agree with their vacation at the beach.
Let me clarify. I don't hate any of his answers. I don't hate them.
Yeah.
There's a couple I could just nitpick and say, feels like he's trying too hard or not being specific enough, but they're all good. And the last two answers are terrific.
He crushed it.
So
I don't know how else he could have answered that any better. Other sports he played in high school, there was one that's baseball. He played third base and shortstop, as you might expect.
That's good. That's a good common crossover sport for quarterbacks.
He was a Patriots fan growing up. He went to training camp. He actually has an autographed football from Mike Vrabel.
I like that he's from Connecticut and he's a Patriots fan. I wouldn't have liked it as much if he was a Patriots fan from Michigan.
He was born in Massachusetts. I know this because I'm looking at his writing.
The rest of his questionnaire?
I mean, as long as he's telling the truth. Like Tyler Childers and Drake and Pearl Jam. Newton, Mass.
Where was his dad on draft night?
He was there, wasn't he?
I never saw him. Now, granted, they had like a revolving door of women next to him. Like it'd be his girlfriend in one moment, then his mom, then one of his sisters, and then someone else. Was he kind of in it? Is that him?
I
is
thought
that him
I
in the
recall
background?
seeing him there.
Well, that previous photo, there's just a
is that
guy
him there?
blurry in the way in the background on the couch.
Michael Levis is his dad's name. His mom's name is Beth.
No, his parents are together. I was curious. I never saw him.
Well, it's because the camera was focused on Will Levis's face.
Well, I think probably
and others.
ESPN execs were saying, "Hey, Dad, can you get out of the shot? Can we get Sis back in? All right, good. Let's get her back in the shot."
Where's Gia? Bring her back over.
Where's the girlfriend? Excuse me, curly hair. Come back over here, please.
Did we
need
just
you in
fall
the
in
shot.
love with Will Levis?
I definitely like him a lot more. Honestly, Hutton, I like him most because of your personal interaction with him.
Okay, yeah, but just being cool
When
about
you told me that story, I was like, okay, he seems cool. When you went up and you didn't
just
confront him, but you were
No,
honest
I
and
introduced
said,
myself. I was like, hey, man, welcome. Welcome
I've
to
crushed the
town.
Titans for drafting you.
Yeah.
I didn't want them to do it. And then he rolled with it, and he said, man, everybody's been crushing me. It's no different.
Yeah, I mentioned it.
I like that.
With OutKick, and I've been against the pick. Welcome to town. If you beat out Tannehill, certainly win me over, and I hope you have great success. Like,
we need to get him in studio.
It's that simple.
We need to get him in studio. We can play back every mean thing I've said about him. He can respond to it. And then we can end the interview just discussing Step Brothers. We can just go back and forth quoting Step Brothers, me and him.
I told him he was welcome to come on anytime.
Davey met him too.
Yeah, I sent Davey down to shake his hand. He was cool with you too, right?
Yeah, no, I came up to him and was very polite, made it to where, I mean, just going into it, I mean, you kind of heard some stories about the guy, but he was very friendly. I told him, like, hey, man, like, welcome to town. I can't say I didn't go as hardcore as Hutton did as saying, like, hey, I've been talking
It wasn't
bleep about
hardcore.
you.
I was just, it was a friendly admission. Like, hey, man, like.
Hutton physically assaulted him, and then it was fine.
Yeah,
they hit their sand wedge together out there playing top golf. The
Yeah.
boys will be boys.
I propose.
He was cool about it, and he didn't give me the idea of he had a big ego based off that
No.
interaction. So I did appreciate that.
It's a very
I'm
brief
amazed that
encounter.
I am in New York City and not seeing any celebrities, and you guys stay back in Nashville, and Taylor Swift comes to town. You're golfing with Will Levis.
Yeah, I mean,
you didn't see Quentin Tarantino on this trip?
Hutton's punching him in the balls when he sees him. I mean, you guys are just getting after it. when
I
I'm
didn't
gone.
go to the Taylor Swift concert, but when I left Topgolf, she started singing Romeo and Juliet, and I'm just like, all right, I got my money's worth. You could just hear it perfectly.
Did you
from right there.
stop and pay,
Oh,
pay
yeah.
your respects to the song?
Yeah, I gave it a good 3 minutes, got in my car, and went
Good.
off.
Good boy, Davey. Good boy. That's what you do.
Coming
when
up-
Taylor plays the name is Love Story. It's the name of the song, right?
I don't know.
When she plays Love Story, you stop whatever you're doing and you pay your respects to that beauty of a
Like
tune.
Lee Greenwood. You stand.
Everybody stands like
Isn't
the
it
national
amazing?
anthem.
Lee Greenwood. I mean, Lee Greenwood song come on, and there are people just stand at attention like it's the national
Did
anthem.
Lee Greenwood ever cut another song that did well other than that one?
The guy is a bowling celebrity based on that song.
Now, granted, I don't know anything
We've
else.
been to how many bowling?
All the time, and he's always got some
charity
sort of
events?
injury. He's got like a wrist injury. He's walking around with a limp. He's got
always very
crutches.
injured.
I looked up his songs. You have
Very
God Bless
brittle.
the USA, and then it's just the Star Spangled Banner and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, it is it's insane.
He's a one-hit wonder, but to be fair, Francis Scott Key also didn't do a lot more that I recognized, other than his one big hit that he made.
Well, we
So,
stand at that for a
it's
reason.
his second national anthem is Lee Greenwood.
Coming up, speaking of Will Levis and just tying in, many have the Titans draft, and they've graded it an A. But you really can't grade drafts, and there are plenty of A's. And I don't know, did you see a D? I didn't see a D grade this past draft. People love Philadelphia's draft, for instance. We're going to go back 3 years to 2020 and see what we were and everyone was saying about certain drafts and compare it to what they have to show for now. That's next on Hot Mic. Brady recently retiring. Your locker was very close to Tom's locker,
right
wasn't
next
it?
to 12, yeah.
What was that like?
Man, it was cool, man. He a funny dude, man. He's a nice guy. Joke with him every day. You know, he's a good dude, man. He's probably one of the only dudes that I know that walk around in a bathrobe in the locker room, bro. So
You go up against him in practice all the time. Could you see that big jump coming from Daniel Jones going into this season?
Man, when I first played against Daniel, you know, coming in last year and seeing him work, man, I knew, you know, the talent that he had. It was just one of those things where, you know, you always hear the saying, God's timing is always right. It was just one of those moments where you knew eventually it was going to click and everything was going to work out, not just for him, but for us as a team. And I'm just so happy for him.
Which video game are you most proud of making the cover for?
Oh, definitely Madden. Madden, yeah. Like I remember I come from a big family. My mom had 6 sisters and 1 brother, and a lot of cousins, 30-some cousins, and you know. And I remember one of the younger ones was like, "Man, you're on Madden. You're really good." And I was like, "Cuz, like, I was the high school #1 player in the country.
Yeah.
I broke every record at Alabama, All-American, I get the pros. I'd won the MVP already. You know?
Yeah.
Been to the Super Bowl, won the MVP. He's like, now, because of man, now you're cool. I was like, oh, okay.
You had done a few things.
Yeah,
is what
yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying.
You know, now I'm good. Okay, all right, well, that's how it works in y'all's minds.
And I remember when I first started working in the morning news, shout out to Drew Kaliski, super producer for NFL Today. He was just talking about season. How you feeling? You know, you ready to go? Are you excited? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like awkwardly hesitating to ask me a question. And I'm like, what's up, man? Speak your piece. And he's like, do you know what's going on in the NFL? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, do you know who plays for what teams and who's been traded where? I'm like, yeah, bro. What do you think? I'm living under a rock? And this is my job. I'm studying just like anything else.
Sixth and Peabody, our location for Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, exercise that you wanted to try out, and I'm all for.
The beer tasting later? That exercise?
Beer tasting's coming up in about
with the craft
15
beers?
minutes. Yes.
Good, okay.
Yes.
I'm making sure we're still doing that exercise.
The Craft Brewing Conference is in town. You can check us out, by the way, on YouTube. Search out OutKick, and we hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already. Check us out daily here at 6th and Peabody and on social at OutKick. So you can take a look at the grades from a couple of weeks ago. There are plenty of A's handed out. Philadelphia comes to mind. The reports that, everyone loves Howie Roseman.
Sort of a unanimous A.
Yeah, a unanimous A. And by the way, us too. We love the Eagles draft. We won't really be able to see the return on investment for 2 or 3 years. And I love what you brought up, a couple of weeks ago. It was like, hey, let's take a look at 3 years ago and see what actually came about. One of the highest graded classes right after the draft was with the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens drafted Patrick Queen and J.K. Dobbins that year. They have Justin Madubuike from Texas A&M.
Good job with that name.
Devin Duvernay. A lot of these players have made big impacts for the Ravens. You get down a bit. There's James Prochet from SMU, 6th-round pick. And I feel like they had good return on investment based on what we see here and who they drafted in 2020.
Yeah, pretty good, not great.
Not great. This was an A grade.
But so much of the Ravens, I remember this draft class and thinking so much of my high grade for them is because the identity of the Ravens. Ravens, Steelers, they have a certain identity that when they draft a guy, you think, that's a Raven. I remember thinking about Patrick Queen and what he did at LSU.
Yeah.
And then when the Ravens drafted, I'm thinking, that's the perfect Ravens pick for that defense.
And it's hard not to give them an A in real time. They had 5 picks in the top 100. Davey, you were going through and combing through all the grades. This one jumped out to you.
So this one kind of came up. I tried to take a consensus of several experts. I know this was Mel Kiper's highest graded team from the draft in 2020. This was also one of those things, too, where you have to look back for this class. It was the year where a lot of the scouts, coaches, GMs weren't able to meet with the players due to COVID protocols and stuff of that nature.
Unless you're Tampa Bay with Tom Brady.
Yeah, and so there were a few teams that I just kind of highlighted for us to go through, and I mean we're going to kick it off with the Ravens, and yeah, I mean we kind of see where they are now. And
now Dallas is a different case. High grade. Tell me who you recognize, Chad, on this list. You've got plenty.
This is one that worked out, I would say.
CeeDee Lamb, Trayvon Diggs. You've got a starting offensive lineman in this group, Ben DiNucci, who backed up and actually started some games.
Who started some and not been that bad for the Cowboys when he started.
So far,
Davey, this is a class that you said got a good grade also?
Yes, this was a highly graded class.
Okay, that makes sense when you see this now. So we're basically 2 for 2 on the highly graded classes doing pretty well.
I mean, PFF, they gave this an A+ right here at the time.
And third on your list for high grades, Minnesota,
which had a ton of draft capital in this class. And this is one. I mean, obviously, you look at. I think there's 14 players that were selected for the Vikings here. Obviously, the top name there, Justin Jefferson alone, just stands out.
That's it. Hands done. They land Justin Jefferson, and their reaction at pick 22 in the draft room, priceless. They wanted him. They had another team draft a different receiver ahead of him, and they end up with Justin Jefferson, who's the best receiver in the NFL. Chance to do 2,000 yards for the first time ever.
Is Jeff Gladney still doing things for them?
No,
he passed away.
He passed away.
Okay.
Yes.
Then no. There's your answer to that.
Cameron Dantzler is.
Yes.
And Troy Dye, I believe, is still. And KJ Osborne.
KJ Osborne also jumped out to me. We've got about 15 names on this list, so I'm trying to squint to see all of them.
Okay, poorly graded classes.
Yeah, you won't have to worry about any list this big anymore after this.
Poorly graded classes. We start with the Green Bay Packers. David.
Which, yeah, and with the Packers, too, it's one of those things we haven't been able to – a lot of people are still – jury's still out, but if the jury's still out 3 years later, you probably didn't do a good job.
Jordan Love started all the drama. If you could go back, if you're Green Bay – you don't make this trade. You don't make this pick in the first round.
I mean, this is a bad class.
A.J. Dillon is still the backup running back for them.
But when you say just in theory, you draft a quarterback in the first round, and we're talking 3 years later, and they've yet to really be the starter, that's a failure, regardless of the circumstances.
And this class was panned across the board. You look at it, everyone's like, why do you not go and get Aaron Rodgers more weapons to work with? And instead, you go ahead and you get his backup, yet you still could have Aaron for another 3 to 4 years. And, I mean, really, Aaron's still playing at a high level, and we just now finally get to see Jordan Love take over this season.
Next up, New England Patriots. And this is where you started to see the dip. This was the draft right after Brady left for Tampa Bay. They had just lost the wild card matchup to the Titans in Foxborough. And they follow it up with a draft class that, again, is not going to come across, Davey, as anything other than worthy of a low grade.
Yeah, and this is also where you look at it from Belichick's perspective, where it's just like, oh, he's going to go find those diamonds in the rough, and it's just not happened with this guy, with this class. I mean, he reached on a kicker in the the 5th round. I think that was the first kicker off the board, who I don't even think the guy made it out of training camp, if memory serves. But again, like Kyle Duggar, they kind of panned it, and that looks like the experts were right on this one.
What we're seeing so far is, for the most part, the experts were pretty spot on.
Well, these are the highest and the lowest, and they're spot on. And then there are teams in the middle that crushed it that didn't get credit for it. But finally, the other poorly graded class, the Houston Texans. Ross Blacklock, Jonathan Grenard. Grenard is still rushing off the edge. That's pretty much it here, guys. I mean, this is why the Texans are where they are.
Yeah. I mean, they only had 5 picks in this class, not much to work with.
Didn't have a first-round pick.
Yeah, they did not use it to their advantage for sure.
Best classes in hindsight, however. Look at Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Bengals took off around this time. And it starts, of course, with Joe Cool, Joe Burrow. But T. Higgins, who's a number 1 wide receiver.
In a number 2 wide receiver role.
Yes. Logan Wilson. And others throughout this. Adeniji is on this, on the offensive line. Chad, this is how you build around a quarterback. You not only hit the quarterback, you hit on other picks around him.
And if we're regrading the draft 3 years later, this is probably number 1 or right up there, right? Even though it didn't get an A+ from the draft experts at the time, we're looking back now and saying A+ grade.
Yeah, this class averaged around like a B+.
Okay.
So not right there at the top, but I mean they're on the edge, and obviously we've seen this team make it to the Super Bowl based off this class alone.
We've talked Cowboys, so let's go to the Tampa Bay Bucks. Among the best classes, and this is right after they acquire Tom Brady, Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr., who is, I believe that Brady faced his dad, right?
Yeah.
That was the big storyline. Keyshawn Vaughn at running back, who helped them towards the end of the year in a role situation, and a handful of others who, special teams worthy. But it starts up front of the offensive line.
Tyler Johnson helped them some too, 5th rounder.
But when you look at this on paper, it's like, you kind of just turn the next page.
Yeah.
But it helped them go on to win a Super Bowl on this particular year. And worst classes in hindsight. There is a hands-down winner, and it's the Tennessee Titans. Isaiah Wilson. Chad, your thoughts?
Just basically taking a hand grenade and setting it off in your own hand. That's what the Titans did with that pick.
Drafted offensive lineman, offensive tackle from Georgia, Isaiah Wilson, who by the middle of the season, wasn't wanted in the locker room around the vets. Not by the vets choosing, by the front office choosing. They sent him away to get his mind right. And by the end of the year, as they're trying to make a playoff push, Isaiah Wilson is partying on a boat with hookers. If you don't believe me, Google image it. 61st overall pick. Christian Fulton still on the roster. He's been banged up. Darrington Evans, 3rd-round running back, off the roster. Laurel Murchison, not on the roster. Cole McDonald was a quarterback out of Hawaii that no one remembers. And Chris Jackson, a 7th-round pick that stuck around playing special teams.
Really bad. But what was the grade on the Titans? Universally?
I believe they got a B or something.
It was F. Average. I'm trying to think of. Let's see. I can pull
it was around a B.
I remember the Isaiah Wilson pick being a head scratcher at the time.
Kuiper actually gave him a C+, so he had them closer to the bottom. But like PFF, from an analytical standpoint, those sites were a lot higher on this
Which
class.
with draft grades is bad.
Now,
I think anytime you get it in the C's, that's when it's really bad.
I want to put this in perspective and why this is important. The Cincinnati Bengals were not the team that they are now when we're looking back on this. Meanwhile, the Titans are coming off of a run where they had just made the AFC Championship game, and they're trying to build around that. And you want to see how fast you can fall. You have a draft like this, and you want to see a riser. Look at Cincinnati. Also, look at Arizona, who's among the worst drafts in this particular class and where they are now. They had just drafted Kyler Murray the draft prior. They had the 8th overall selection. They go with Isaiah Simmons, who's listed as a linebacker, but plays safety, plays on the line of scrimmage. He doesn't have an assigned position, and he's the 8th overall pick, and he still doesn't have an assigned position.
Yep.
Josh Jones, Rashard Lawrence on the defensive line. Benjamin's a late-round pick. None of these guys are factors for what the Cardinals are trying to rebuild instead of build upon. Mentioned the Patriots, and then finally the Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders, Henry Ruggs, Damon Arnett, Brian Edwards, who, by the way, I loved, but is just a reception possession receiver. And then that's it. That's how quickly you can get fired.
And I remember loving this class. And it's a lot of SEC guys, right? With Lynn Bowden Jr., also from Kentucky, who was a great two-way player, quarterback, wide receiver for them, do-everything guy.
Gadget guy.
Brian Edwards, another do-everything guy. But it's, once again, sort of guys without a position.
And they had 2 first-round picks in this. Went with Ruggs, who on the field is as dynamic as they come. We know now he's
yesterday pled guilty to vehicular homicide.
Yes, and then Arnett, who everyone thought was overdrafted, turns out they were right. And this was Mike Mayock. This is Mike Mayock and John Gruden, who are no longer with the franchise. Chad, I think the exercise is interesting because the overall perception can be reality on the top of the line. You know, the highest graded classes kind of meet up with where you actually think those players are. Meanwhile, I bet this class got a high grade, and they're among the worst. And it's due in large part to 2 first-round picks. That's going to help you because a lot of the draft analysts are going to have these players as first-round picks, so they want to be right, and they're going to give you an A+ based on those 2 picks because they also had them in the first round.
Always wondered if human nature, if you're a draft analyst, you're Mel Kiper, you're Todd McShay, and Mike Mayock, who went from being draft analyst to GM, I wonder if that would cloud your judgment, good or bad, on his classes.
I think it's got to help you because those guys have all thought about what they would do in a front office.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like when they're giving grades out, I wonder how that colors their opinion of his draft class. If they had a rivalry with him as a draft analyst, does it make them lean a little bit negative towards it or positive because he's someone from their industry that moved on and crossed over to NFL GM?
What's your takeaway from what we did, just looking back 3 years?
It was, to me, shockingly pretty spot on in terms of the really good classes with the good grades and the bad classes, the bad grades. I think the big takeaway is the classes in the middle that at the time would be, B-, C+ grade that turned out to be A+.
The one thing I do
like Cincinnati.
I do want to add about this class that you seldom ever see, but there were 4 quarterbacks drafted in the first round in 2020, and all 3, the first 3, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Herbert, all had their 5th-year option exercise, and we just saw Jordan Love agree to a contract extension by 1 year.
That's true.
It's rare that you
instead of the 5th-year option.
One gets the benefit of not having played, Jordan Love, so we don't really know yet on him.
Hit us up with your reaction. You can join Chad in the chat on OutKick through the YouTube channel. Coming up, we will hit some other headlines, get you ready for the tip-offs across the NBA, and check out what's on tap here at Yeehaw with the Brewing Company and 6th and Peabody. That's next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Bold taste of a Southern legend.
Glad you've been with us throughout the show. Chad, do you think Philadelphia closes it out tonight in the series with Boston? I do.
I do too.
They're back home.
I'm in on Philly.
Okay.
So
and
Eastern
Denver
Conference Finals will be Philly and Miami. And I think we're going to see Lakers, Nugs in the Western Conference Finals. I hope both those series live up to what the second round was, which was fantastic. These series have been great, and I hope the conference finals will be the same.
Hopefully just more of the same of the NBA playoffs with good games on tap
Well, I'm
tonight.
hoping for long series once we get to the conference finals and then the finals also.
I know Phoenix was down, but with Durant, who knows?
They're down, but they're not out.
I'd be down if this happened in my apartment. So there's a video of a guy, there's a pest control company with one of their employees urinating all over the floor for an apartment complex that uses this pest control company under contract, chasing a cat around the room. And, I guess he did actually spray the pesticides.
Is this how he sprays?
But he's peeing on the floor, the couch, the kid's toy box, and then he notices a camera on the wall. Stories at OutKick.com. Chad, what would you do if you found this based on just cameras, in the home, motion detectors or whatever?
I would want him both fired and prosecuted.
Yeah, this is sick.
For vandalism. I mean, I would go all out to make sure that he was arrested and paid a hefty fine or served jail time, and also could never work in pest control again.
The family spent over $4,000 replacing the carpet, the couch, and other items that had been urinated on. When asked why he decided to urinate in the family's living room, he gave a crazy answer. He said that he was having a bad day and he was sick of people.
Well, at least he was honest. It's not that crazy to me. We've all had bad days. We're sick of people at times.
You know he was on camera,
The only difference is between that guy and the rest of us is we don't walk into someone's living room and piss on the floor. That's the biggest difference.
Davey, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to add, this was actually the owner of the pesticide company.
The owner.
So, yeah, but he is facing criminal charges. The worst part about this, though, is the family didn't...
Owner or not?
They didn't realize, this had happened until, a couple of days later when they went back and checked. And the man actually peed on their daughter's, toy box. So she was actually, playing with those toys after the fact. So, I mean, that just makes it even worse. This guy's just like you said, I'm just having a bad day. It's like, well, then, I mean, what even crosses your mind to do something like this?
Go pee outside.
He's drunk.
Yeah, that could also be it. Drunk, bad day, hates kids, apparently.
Just that's some bit.
Wait a minute. Let's zoom in on that guy again.
Look at the cats are just staring at him as he's peeing on the furniture.
It's maybe one of the saddest photos ever taken. Two cats just playing.
There's one thing
whimsically
for sure.
in the background. Guys peeing on some furniture.
One thing's for sure. This guy's not sober. Right?
I wouldn't think so. He's on something.
Yeah, he could have had a better beer though from Yeehaw Brewing Company.
We're about to not be sober.
Craft Brewers Conference continues. Chad, you're trying the Red Rye IPA made right here in Music City.
Brooke loves a nice rye, I think I heard.
Malty yet dry spiciness from the multiple different rye malts used. Your thoughts?
Oh, this is good. This is good. Complete opposite reaction that I had to that tart raspberry beer yesterday. This one right here, this sticks.
I'm going with the White Oak Rye IPA made here in Nashville as well, here at 6th and
Sorry,
Peabody.
Brooke, I'm drinking this one.
Aged on American white oak chips to really blend all of the flavors together.
White oak chips?
White oak chips.
Is there a method to
And that's
beer
very
tasting?
good. That's very good as well.
Do you smell it? Do you do the wine
I don't
thing?
do anything like that.
Do you reverse it in, or you just taste it?
You just drink beer, Chad.
That's what I like about beer. You just drink it.
Chad, you've been. I'm gonna try the one you've already tried, which is the Carolina Classic. You go with the cold IPA.
Okay.
This hops give an aroma and a flavor of tropical fruit and citrus. This is the cold IPA from Greenville, South Carolina. I'm going with the Carolina Classic, also from Greenville, a clean, crisp American lager.
It's a great beach beer.
Cheers. It's been a great week. I realize it's Thursday. They're wrapping up the conference today. It's been a great week with Yeehaw Brewing Company.
And a special shout out to Old Smoky and Yeehaw, great partners of ours here. We're here every day, downtown, 6th and Peabody studio. But great host to us. We've made a lot of friends within the company, and always fun being here in Hutton. We look right outside every day, and it's a party going on right outside the studio. We hope to bring some of that party into the studio with us. That's why we have random beer tastings. When they have a craft beer, festival going on in town, you know what we're going to do? We're going to enjoy some of that
They gave
beer.
out their World Awards last night here at 6th and Peabody for all the craft brewers. Tomorrow, we've got full reaction to the NFL schedule. We know all the top games, at least some of them, from across Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, doubleheaders, Black Friday games.
We also know the culprit who did not vote Nikola Jokic in the top 5 of their MVP voting. We will have that for you tomorrow.
He's a well-known name.
We know the culprit, and you know the name.
Join us.
You know it.
3 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Central. We will be live across the OutKick network for Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Hope you'll join us for Fridays. We send you to the weekend.
Say my name.